Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast. This is number 50, so it's a very special episode for us, and we were very happy to hear when we got the word that Steve Maxwell was going to be our third international guest. Steve Maxwell is a walking library if it goes about fitness, jiu-jitsu, strength and conditioning training, everything about health. And wow, we had a blast in this podcast. We've been talking about a lot of subjects for about 2 hours, and ranging from fasting to strength and conditioning training with kettlebells, his jiu-jitsu journey, which started with the Gracie family back in the early days, and just everything about life. And it's been a huge pile of information that just sunk into my head, and I still need to process it. So I'm really happy that Steve Maxwell was here in the studio. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast as well. Please visit our sponsor, nutrifit.com. It's your place where you can buy supplements like Onnit, Natural Stacks, Pure Pharma, and Bulletproof. We ship to everywhere in Europe, and we have a money-back guarantee. So buy the products, try them out. If you don't like them, you can send them back. No problem, we'll refund you money. So enjoy the podcast, guys.
This podcast is sponsored by Nutrofit, official distributor of Onnit supplements in the Benelux and powerful supplier of Bulletproof and Natural Stacks. Your online place to buy supplements and training gear that will help you achieve total human optimization. Try with no risk with our Nutrofit money-back guarantee, shipping all across Europe within 24 hours. Find us at www.nutrofit.com.
I had my intro.
This
is the first time. Okay, so this is a special podcast, man.
Yep.
This is number 50. So
Big 5-0.
We came a long, long way.
I didn't expect us to come this far, to be honest.
I did expect, actually.
Well, I dreamed about it a little.
Yeah.
It actually happened.
So when did you first saw our guest today? When was the first time you had him on your vision?
I'm afraid to tell, because I know he could beat me on a 1-to-1, but I kind of pirated his DVD on kettlebell training, and that was a big step forward for me in my strength and conditioning training, because that really opened my eyes to the ability of basically a bowling ball with a hand bar could do. So that was the first time I saw this person.
Yeah, I got you got my attention on a Joe Rogan show, who was promoting your DVDs about kettlebells. And today in the studio we have Steve Maxwell.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. And you're a strength and conditioning legend, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Maybe in my own mind, but
and a lot of people are mine. And you've been around the world, and you've done a lot of stuff. You've been training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for ages. You've been wrestling. You have a 3rd degree black belt?
Fifth.
Wow.
Nice.
All right.
I've been a black belt since 2000.
That's a long time. You were from the early days.
From Elio Gracie's second son, Helson.
And you were the first one in America, right?
Not the first. There was a couple guys that got belts from the Machado brothers.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the first, as far as I know, directly from the Gracie family in the U.S.
That's a privilege to be proud of.
Helson Gracie's definitely first American, so I was pretty happy about that.
Are you still in touch with the Gracies or with Helson?
Yeah, not so much with Helson. There was a bit of a falling out, as oftentimes happens in the martial arts world. But yeah, I still am in touch.
Cool. And
I still promote Gracie Jiu Jitsu. The main difference between Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Gracie Jiu Jitsu isn't the holds or the techniques. Mm-hmm. It's the teaching style and the educational system. It's a way of teaching Jiu Jitsu, and that was invented by Grandmaster Elio Gracie. It's a way that you take a beginner and you take him through the technique and the methods.
Yeah.
And there's a few people still teaching this. Obviously, the grandsons, Henner and Hiram and Halleck, they're doing a fantastic job out there. They're still teaching in the old school way. The Valenti brothers at North Miami Beach, they were Pedro Valenti was the last guy to directly get his black belt from Master Elia. Hickson has his own curriculum, but it's based on the work of his father. Hoist Gracie, obviously. Pedro Sauer, they're still very much into the system. Luis Heredia, a.k.a. Limon in Maui, teaches old Gracie Jiu Jitsu style. He was Hickson Gracie's first black belt. So there are bits and pieces around the world where they're still teaching this particular educational system. And the other differentiation is there's a big emphasis on the stand-up self-defense. It's something that's been lost to the sportive style of jiu-jitsu. Now, when people think of jiu-jitsu, they just think about going to the half guard or berimbolo. And, that's all fun game, for sure. It's fun to play that game. But, when it comes to stand-up self-defense, the Gracie jiu-jitsu system is very complete. Gun defense, knife defense, weapon retention system for police guys, taking away a shotgun or an AK-47 pointed in your face. All that stuff was there. Yeah. Every kind of grab imaginable, attacks from behind, rear chokes, all the escapes while standing. And Master Elia was huge on making sure that people knew that. He didn't feel you could call yourself a jiu-jitsu person until you mastered those techniques. So at every level, blue, purple, brown, you had to know so many of the self-defense techniques. And now that I'm in my 60s, I'll be 64 in a couple months. That's the thing that stays with you. That's the thing that stays with you. Self-defense. I can't compete against young guys anymore. I mean, I still get in the ground and, roll around with some of the guys my size and so forth. I like roll with the girls, Yeah, it's always fun.
But if I see you on YouTube, I mean, you're doing chin-ups, and I see all these kind of exercises, and you see videos of Steve Maxwell, 60 years old, and all he's doing crazy shit. So you're fitter than most young people, probably.
Well, yeah, maybe nowadays.
Yeah,
it's a sad thing,
Yeah.
What's happening to the youth of the world, particularly the youth of America. So.
Well, at the moment that we're recording this, there's actually a change happening. I think every obese kid right now is walking his legs off. Everybody's playing Pokemon Go. I don't know if you heard about this. It's a great movement towards getting inactive people to get off the couch. Yeah. But I know what you're getting at. They're mainly very inactive and sedentary.
Someone made a funny joke that Pokemon Go did more for youth fitness in 6 months than Michelle Obama did in like the whole 4 years that they had that whole move, get up and move type campaign in the United States.
So I can imagine.
Sometimes it takes.
It's all about the packaging, I guess.
All about the packaging, man.
Yep, marketing.
Cool.
It works. But the street defense you talked about, because you said, well, when I roll with, the strong young guys right now, is that something that's actually applicable there? There are self-defense techniques that you can use in ground rolling that you wouldn't normally apply that you can use to outsmart these guys? Or is it just because, if you get in a situation, it's just
it's more of
defense?
A situation. We're talking about some serious stuff that would cause some damage. So that's something that you could just do when training. A lot of kicking, a lot of up kicks, a lot of using your feet against someone's head or face from the ground. But you have to specifically be taught how to do it. Pretty much like a girl would fight.
Yeah.
Fight like a girl,
Smart fighting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you have kids?
No, I don't.
Okay, good. Keep it that way, man.
Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. We need to talk about this a little more. Why would you say a thing like that? Yeah.
But listen, if you've ever had the experience of trying to diaper a struggling, kicking, flailing baby, and it's really hard sometimes, like a really active little child, like a toddler. Now imagine a full-grown person, kicking like in the same way. It'd be pretty hard to do anything to that person.
Yep.
So the Gracie self-defense, I'm past the age where I can beat anybody up, maybe another little old guy, but someone can't beat me up. Even a very big, strong guy would find it really difficult to beat me up.
You can defend.
I couldn't beat him up. I can't beat anybody up.
Yeah, but you're able to defend.
But I could defend.
Keep
It's
yourself safe.
It's a way different way of thinking to defend yourself, to preserve your life and your limbs against a bigger, stronger adversary. That's what the Gracie Jiu Jitsu self-defense can do for you. And it's especially good for women and children, women in particular. You saw all the headlines of the attacks on the women in Germany, like in Cologne. It made news all over Europe. But a lot of this stuff is going on in various places. And this type of self-defense, I believe personally, every child, woman, and girl should know this.
Yeah.
And it's very good for oldsters like myself.
Could you go into some key points, for example, for that every women should know in regard to self-defense? I saw a choke on Facebook, a choke from the guard, these last couple of days on social media, which was the one choke every girl should know, which is a choke from the guard with a T-shirt, where you basically use someone's shirt as a collar choke.
Sure.
And the idea was that if you get in a situation where you get assaulted, it's probably likely that you end up on the back in a guard, and you can pretty much use that choke in any situation. So that was a pointer for every girl should know this one. If you look at that from the Gracie self-defense point of view, what are pointers that you teach people that everyone should know when it comes to self-defense?
Well, every fight starts standing up. So it's one thing on the ground, but it's another thing standing up. And most jiu-jitsu schools don't even teach the throws or takedowns anymore. I came from a background of NCAA Division I wrestling. That's a very high level of wrestling in the U.S. And I was a pretty decent wrestler in the day. It's back in the 60s and 70s. And so I had a good background with base and balance and takedowns and so forth. And I found wrestling worked quite well even against judo guys, under jiu-jitsu style rules. But most guys don't get that anymore. They don't even know what to do from their feet. Usually they just try to pull the guy in their guard and get the fight going. So every fight starts standing up. And I'll tell you how effective Gracie Jiu Jitsu stand-up self-defense. My ex-wife, DC Maxwell, was the first woman to become certified by the Gracie family to teach the women self-defense. In those days, it was called rape safe. Now it's called women empowered. I guess that word rape is an ugly word. So
it's not very marketing-wise.
Yeah, women empowered. It's a better sound. Anyway, after she had taken that course, one day she says, "Hey, try to grab me." We're in the kitchen, and I had many years of wrestling. I was already like a brown belt in jiu-jitsu by this point. I think maybe she was still a blue belt or maybe a purple. I don't remember. But anyway, I tried to literally grab her and force her into position down. I couldn't do it. I would have had to resort to professional level takedowns, which the average rapist or street thug wouldn't be able to do. So I was trying to act like a layman, like a typical thug. I couldn't do it. And she was maybe 118 pounds. I had like 175 pounds. I could not force this smaller, weaker individual, in this case my wife, down. I couldn't do it, not without resorting to, like I say, cheating with
punching, kicking,
violence.
Well, I mean, even trying to punch or kick, some of the things she was doing, I would have hurt my hands and her elbows and her head. Yeah, no, it's very, very effective. It's quite good. And it's all about the escape, not fighting, getting away.
Yeah.
Breaking away and escaping, which is what I would do too.
Keep moving.
Every animal in the animal kingdom will run from another predator if possible. The most powerful predator in the North American continent is the grizzly bear or the Kodiak bear. Yet they'll run from dogs if they have a chance because they know in nature if you get injured, you can't hunt.
Yeah.
Now you're screwed. So, most even predatory animals will run from other animals. Only during mating season do they where they fight. But usually it's never to the death. But only humans are stupid enough to stand there against overwhelming odds and try to fight, because
it's the ego, it's pride.
Ego mind.
I can do this.
Believe me, I'm not above running. I mean, truthfully, the best self-defense is just practice your sprints once or twice a week.
Yeah. Isn't that what they teach at Krav Maga? You just basically the ending is always the same: kick to the nuts, run away.
Well, it's not a bad idea. We call it in jiu-jitsu stun and run.
Yeah, it sounds solid.
A quick stun. It could be a smack to the face or a palm heel to the nose, and just get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you go into, you were talking about
taking somebody's shotgun out of his hands and stuff. You know, those are situations you want to prevent anyway.
Yeah.
Or,
Well,
you know,
hopefully,
even knife battles. You know, there's like no way to get out of a knife battle with it.
If the guy knows what he's doing with the knife, you're pretty much stabbed. You're going to see some blood.
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu does give you a very good chance of surviving if there's just no other way out. You know, usually you would get something longer than the weapon, than the knife.
Yeah.
Anything, your belt, your shoe on your hand, your jacket, but let's hope that we all have karma that's good enough not to lead us into these negative,
I was wondering,
violent situations.
I want to ask you, because you were just talking about weapons and stuff, and like, AK-47s. We live here in the Netherlands. We don't have AK-47s here, man, and shotguns are very limited,
some criminals have, but you don't run into those guys.
I don't want to go
regularly.
into the numbers, but I think we have few deaths by shotguns, by weapons and stuff. I just actually was on Facebook, and like the whole CrossFit community is going insane about the CrossFit games. They added a Glock pistol to the prize for the winners.
Oh.
For the CrossFit games.
Is that even legal in the Netherlands?
No.
No. I mean, it's in America. In
America! Everybody has a gun.
Yeah, I know. So I see
strange.
the whole Dutch community, and like we don't like weapons very much. It's like, why the fuck are they giving a Glock gun to these athletes? Why don't you give them a kettlebell or something? So what is your take on this? Weapon industry in America and firearms issues. What's your take on that?
It's never going to disappear no matter what. I think it's kind of sad because I see the gun as something, it's what fear people use, people that are afraid. And I actually owned guns for a while because, I kind of was in that fear mentality, and I realized, wow, if you have the weapon, you're going to visualize yourself using it. You can't help it, right? If you have a gun, you're going to at some point start imaging what it would be like to point it and shoot and kill somebody.
Yep.
What you image and the kind of thoughts you put are the exact situations that you attract. It's mental science, or the universal law of attraction. I decided I didn't want to be that guy, and I didn't want the bad karma of taking someone's life. I got rid of my guns. I just took them to a pawn shop and sold them. I didn't even argue or dicker with the guy. What he offered, I just said, okay, fine.
Give it to me.
Give me the money, and I was out of there like that.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people that think like me, but you have to understand that America has a long history from the very earliest pioneers. When they were there, they had guns. It was like all part of the American psyche. You had the Native Americans there, and there was conflict between the European settlers and the Indians, and they, in those days they felt like they needed the gun. A lot of these people were on very primitive frontiers.
Yeah.
And the gun was a protective, and it was written into the Constitution as an American right, the right to bear arms. So that long-standing history and tradition is going to be hard to beat.
Wasn't the whole point of the right to bear arms? It's the Second Amendment, right? Something. Wasn't the whole point of that as well to make sure that you could always overthrow your government?
Yes.
I think that was a part of it, right?
Part of it because, at that time it was a British colony, and there was a lot of conflict between the colonies and the British government. That's, of course, spawned the whole American Revolution. So we have this long tradition. It's very deeply embedded in the American psyche. Then you have special interest groups, NRA. The NRA and so forth. And I don't ever see the guns going away.
No.
And many people make the point, well, if there was more guns, there might be less gun violence. I don't whether I buy into that, but
The numbers are not really telling
the numbers are not telling us good things. And then you see a nice, peaceful country like the Netherlands, or other places in Scandinavia, Norway and Sweden and Iceland, where there are no guns or very few guns. The murder rates and the violent crimes are like way down.
Yeah.
And some people blame it on the drug trade, but there's plenty of drugs in Europe too.
Yeah,
but you just don't legalize it. You just don't see the crazy gun violence that you do.
Yeah. Well, that's a big experiment that's going on right now, because they are legalizing in America, and it's very interesting to see what that's going to do to crime rates. But I think if I'm not mistaken, it already has a noticeable effect on the crime, for example, in Mexico, where a lot of the cartels make their money from selling weed over the border, and because they're legalizing, they're losing their business and their power. Because
of course, then there's always the harder stuff.
Yes, of course.
The methamphetamine is still really popular, and of course, cocaine and crack is always going to be around, and that hard stuff is always going to be a major. Yeah. People want it. The drug war basically failed. Yeah. Because how can you make war on what people want?
Exactly, it sells itself, and it's kind of curious to, if you think about what it actually is, why people do, but they've been doing it since ancient times. I mean, whenever alcohol, mushrooms, whatever, as long as there's been mankind, and we've been able to alter our experiences, we have. So I don't think you can actually, I think I agree, you can never make that go away. So the best thing would be to legalize and, actually tax it so you can, help to build your infrastructure.
Yeah, control it somehow. Make sure that at least what they're buying is what they buy. So often you get,
There used to be a time in Holland when you went to a house party, a big rave, that you were able to go there with your amphetamines, your ecstasy, you could go and you could say to a guy there that's from an institute, is this clean? Is this okay? Is there no poison in this? And I would test it on the spot for you. This is okay, you can take this. Yeah. And then they started tightening the rules again, and they made that go away. And since then, the incidents and the deaths and the bad quality of product has returned. So in tolerating it and, as you said, regulating it, you can actually control the damage a lot that it does to, for example, the health or whatever it does to people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you were just talking about wild animals and about fear. So my head made some connections about a book that I'm reading. It's called In an Unspoken Voice. It's written by Peter A. Levine. This mister is a PhD. And he talks about how the body releases trauma and restores goodness. So he describes an example where you drive along the road and you see a deer who will freeze in the lights of your car. You stop the car, the deer will run away, and the next thing it will do, it will shake off all the bad energy, or he calls it the fear. And it goes on. We people, we tend to freeze up and everything will be okay and we'll be like, all right, cool, let's continue. But we don't shake it off. Is that something that you recognize? Is that something you agree with?
Absolutely. I first became aware of this whole concept when I was in my early 20s. Mm-hmm. I had my first Rolfing experience. Perhaps you've heard of this body-mind technique.
Rolfing?
No.
Rolfing. It was invented by a woman by the name of Dr. Ida Rolf. She was a PhD in biochemistry. Mm-hmm. She had a son who had been stricken by the great polio epidemic during the 1950s in the United States. And the boy was all twisted, and his limbs, his legs were twisted from the polio.
What happens when you have polio? It's not very common.
It affects the nervous system.
Okay.
It used to be a real big problem back in the 50s,
yeah.
Especially in the U.S. I don't know how it was in Europe. But a lot of kids...
And we had vaccinations for that.
Yeah, well, they had vaccines. But prior to that time. Anyway, she took the child to specialist after specialist trying to get these legs straightened out. Mm-hmm. And no one could help. Western medicine had no answers for this boy. So out of sheer frustration, she started literally molding and working his legs, working the lines of connective tissue called fascial tissue. Mm-hmm. And she got the legs straightened to the point where the guy was just a normal person with a normal walking gait, didn't need any support or braces or anything for his legs. And she fully restored functioning using this technique that she later developed into a what she referred to as postural integration, aka known as Rolfing. And there's Rolfers all over the world. It is the people that do it are the most highly trained body workers that you have to go to school for 3 years to get your Rolfing. But before you're even accepted, mm-hmm. you have to have 10,000 hours of experience in body work and massage before you're even accepted into school. Then it's 3 years. So It's very intense, very extensive. It was at that point I was rolfed by that boy, that crippled boy. His name was Dick Demerly. He's still in Switzerland, still doing rolfing. Cool. He was my first rolfer. And while he was working with me, I had a lot of trauma due to old injuries in early high school wrestling. I'd injured my neck very badly, my back. I I actually had a broken neck, which I recovered from, but I still had a lot of scar tissue and pain every single day.
How did you break it?
In wrestling, I was thrown off the mat onto the hardwood floor.
Wow.
The neck healed. I actually went on to wrestle, but I never was quite the same. I was always in pain. After the Rolfing, the pain was released. But he was the one that alerted me to the fact that I had this emotional trauma stored in my joints. And that every single trauma that you've ever had, there's like a muscle memory that stays with you. So when you were 3 years old and you fell off your tricycle, or you were 6 and you fell out of the tree when you were climbing with your friends, or you fell off the skateboard or whatever, that stays with you, and you have a negative muscle memory that stays in there, and there's like a subconscious reminder. It's a fear spike that's still in the mind that you might not even be consciously aware of, and it stays. You hold your body a certain way. There's certain tension in the body, the connective tissue is forever changed. The Rolfer gets in there and irons all that out, but as he's doing it, the emotions are released.
Yeah.
So it sounds kind of strange, but you may find yourself very sad to the point of tears, maybe crying or something as this is released. And terrible emotional frights also can be stored in the body as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times people have had a terribly traumatic emotional experience, maybe watching a loved one die, or an automobile accident, or watching some terrible sight when you're a child. It can have an effect even on your physical self, your body. And you're right, that energy stays in there in most humans. And a lot of people carry that around for life. And I had a very good experience with the Rolfing. It got me completely out of pain. It released a lot of... some people actually find their personalities change as a result of this release of all this tension. And
less pressure on the nerve system, I'd imagine.
Taking the connective tissue and releasing this.
Yeah, I think this Rolfing, it reminds me of a lady that I met who actually went to New Zealand to study with Maori healers. And they have... their idea is that pain comes from external, goes in the body. So, but you have to. Pain comes with a feeling, and you can only release it with that same feeling by Rolfing. They do it with like these stones, like these really sharp.
Is it like myelogenics?
It's like myelogenics kind of thing.
It sounds like myelogenics.
Well, I don't know if myelogenics is like the general world, but it's kind of like what Kelly Starrett is doing, like getting everything loose in your joints and stuff, and making sure.
Because what does a Rolfer do to the tissue, to the muscle tissue? Does it?
They get in there with their fingertips, their fists, their elbows. It's quite uncomfortable in some cases, exquisitely painful.
Yeah.
And like you say, you're kind of going through a form of that same trauma that put it in there in the first place. Yeah. And of course, the more out of alignment you are, the more misaligned you are, the greater the pain and the discomfort.
Wow.
So if it's just a mild thing, it's a mild discomfort.
Yeah.
If you have extreme pain, then it's extreme discomfort.
Yeah.
I mean, to the point, in some cases, tears.
I might imagine afterwards as well, because if you have a certain tension in a specific part of your body and the tension gets released, your entire anatomy changes a little, and other stuff might start behaving differently because of the release of the tension.
Your entire psyche. Yeah. And it's very important that you begin to move differently too. There's also a sister discipline that is what they call Rolf movement. It's very similar to Feldenkrais. Maybe you've heard of Moshe Feldenkrais, who he was an old judo guy. Before there was Krav Maga, Moshe Feldenkrais was the teacher of the Israeli Special Forces self-defense.
Okay.
But he was also a movement therapist. He believed that the human mind knows how to move. We weren't born with bad posture. We were born with good natural movement for the most part. But because of things like chair sitting, or certain traumas, you start to forget. And he developed a movement therapy that you basically relearn natural movement, natural pain-free movement. And he and Ida Rolf did some work together. The work crossed, and Rolf movement was based on that. So it's not enough just to get realigned, but you also have to now become aware of the way you move.
You have to relearn.
You have to move differently, or you're just going to go back in the same. If you keep doing the same stuff, you're going to go back in the same pattern. bad habits.
What are common things that Rolf movement might address in posture and movement?
Internally rotated feet or externally rotated feet. You see a lot of people walk with their feet turned out because the glute.
I think I'm one of those. Yeah.
You see it a lot with fighters, like Muay Thai guys.
Yeah.
You know, you see forward head and kyphosis, mostly desk jockeys. But you'll see it also with jiu-jitsu guys and fighters.
Shoulders and stuff?
Yeah, your shoulders get internal rotated.
Get up,
forward head, you get that big curve in your back.
Yeah,
ironically, it's the same posture as a desk jockey.
Yeah.
Swimmer sometimes, internal rotation. You get all these overuse injuries. Cyclists are terrible posture. Guys that ride the racing style bikes. So all these repetitive movements create these negative postures in our body. And the Rolfer can get in there and integrate. It's called postural integration. Brings you back into posture. Yeah. But, there's other therapies also that do similar things. Maybe you've heard of ART, active release technique, ART. ART.
No.
Very fantastic.
What does it do?
Basically, it's very similar to Rolfing, and they get in and release a lot of the tension and the connective tissue. But once again, unless you become very consciously aware of your movements, you're just going to need another session in a few weeks. Some people do that. They're always going to the practitioner. It's almost like they become
or at least if they
dependent on it to get released. But you should be able to do it yourself over time. You should be able to recognize, I'm out of alignment, I'm misaligned, this is a negative movement. So it does bring a conscious awareness. And relating back to the animal that you used, this is one way that a human being can get rid of a lot of that stored up trauma. But unless you're very, very psychically aware of the negative impact of these negative energies, you're right. People just tend to hold on to them forever and ever,
Yeah. Didn't you release them with, what did you call it again? It's the thing that, what's the guy called again? Elliot Hulse.
Oh, yeah.
You have a technique of that, right?
Yeah.
You told me about that.
I went to Elliot Hulse in London, and we did dynamic meditation from Osho, which is where it's a few stages. The first stage is where you breathe very intensely, very chaotic. So you're breathing the air, makes your whole body full of electricity, like an energy, that kind of energy. So you get filled up, and then the second phase is a release phase, where you can scream, or you can, if you do the breathing well, the screaming, the crying, the laughing, the emotions get out. They call it catharsis. And it's very intense, but it's very releasing. And after that you have to center again. So you have to jump, and you jump on your heels, and you say ho, 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 and it goes on. Then there's another phase where you stand still for 15 minutes. You can't move, so you're standing up. And at one point stop, and you have to stand still, because then once you move, the whole energy flow will break, and the exercise was nothing. And then there's a relaxing 10 minutes where you can just dance very softly. It's about loving life, yourself, blah, blah, blah. But it is extremely intense. And I did it with 500 people with Elliot in the UK in a hotel. And
all in one room.
It was like 500 gorillas going nuts in a room. It was so intense, but it felt so released afterwards. So it's and after that in the Netherlands, I did a 21-day meditation challenge where you can do this, because you have a lot of patterns you were just talking about, and you need to clean up all that shit. And then at one point it gets lighter and lighter. Man, I felt great after 3 weeks.
Wow!
So you do it 3 weeks in a row, and pretty intense.
But that's the mental side. Do you use breathing techniques or anything?
Very much so. And that sounds very much like an intuitive Qigong that I learned from a guy in St. Petersburg, Russia, who had studied Chinese medicine for years.
Okay.
And
intuitive Qigong?
Qigong.
What's this?
Qigong. Qigong. However you say that in Chinese.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
But what is it?
Basically, you're shaking. So there's shaking, and there's shivering and turning. I saw a real interesting video of a Tibetan yoga master doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I've seen this Chinese system. When I was in Russia, also a very similar system. There's a guy that used to study with Joe Pilates that came up with this gyrokinetic exercise. So it seems like people all over the world are kind of figuring out the same thing. And just this basic shaking and shivering, you get rid of a lot of these pent-up tensions in the body. And anytime muscular tension is created from thought, thought creates emotion. Emotion creates the body, because every cell in your body is under the direct command of your mind. And many times this is subconscious. You're not even aware of it. But by bringing awareness to the whole situation, you can release a lot of this pent-up tension and stored emotions in your body.
Yeah.
And it feels quite good. And then back to the breathing, you have sympathetic and parasympathetic breathing. The sympathetic is basically what I call panic breathing. It's usually upper chest breathing, mouth inhales, fight or flight. You try to avoid that as much as possible, because it creates this adrenalization response. And of course, with adrenaline comes all these negative hormones. So you have, you're basically stressing yourself out.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not too big into the Wim Hof method. The Wim Hof method surely will work in cold, freezing water and cold environment. But my question is, why the hell would you want to do it? What's the payoff?
I think the immune system responds, right?
There's so much better. Dude, I haven't been sick in 35 years, and I've never used the Wim Hof method.
What's the secret?
I'm big into the Wim Hof. I've done a few of his. I've been into the ice baths a few times.
By the way, it's an ancient yogi trick.
I mean, it's breathing. It's all the same.
Nothing new
It's all the same. But I think what he explains is like his breathing method gives the same kind of result when you would be high in the mountains and high altitude. It gives the same physical result.
So it makes the blood more transport more oxygen, basically.
Yeah, basically.
I don't believe that.
That sounds like something that can be tested. Actually,
I've studied the Buteyko method, and I use an oxygen oximeter, so I know exactly what my blood oxygen levels are. And for sure, the parasympathetic breathing, where you stay in a calm state. This was the breathing of Master Rickson Gracie, the greatest jiu-jitsu fighter the world's ever seen.
Yeah.
He would do this. I'd watch him in seminars go 72 people in a row without any sound of the breath other than just light breathing. Totally calm, never losing his mind. As soon as you start getting into that upper chest excitement breathing, you over-adrenalize, you use your ability to make decisions. You can fatigue yourself quite rapidly in any kind of stress.
Lose coordination.
You lose muscle coordination. So the idea is to keep non-adrenalized. And you can simulate training at altitude. It's called breathe light to breathe right, by sipping a little bit of air. And you see this little nostril, this little notch underneath? You bring the air in close with little sips.
Oh, that's
and
nice.
You underbreathe. It's amazing. You create a resiliency against CO2. In other words, you're not so sensitive to CO2 buildup, so you don't get that oxygen debt thing going on. It's like similar to like training at altitude, and it's all very calming, calm breathing. That's why I don't like to get myself all riled up and over adrenalized. You can become addicted to adrenaline like drugs. You've heard of adrenaline junkies. Usually it's associated with thrill sports, but I've seen people in the gym that go there every day and smash themselves on the treadmill and the stepper, and they're exhausted and they're tired, but they got to get their adrenaline fixed.
They're doing the same thing.
And they're just as fat as they were the day they started, because it puts you in fat storage mode. They're always chronically tired and fatigued. Yeah. It's almost like, they'll have their coffee, which also, jacks up the stress hormones. Then they do their adrenalized breathing through their mouth and upper chest, almost like they're in a total panic state. And then they wonder why they're so freaking tired all the time, why they can't lose weight.
Could you please tell a little bit more about why overtraining makes you go into fat storage mode? Because this is a common pitfall I see people walk into when they want to get active with their body. They start training, but they start overtraining. I have a hard time slowing them down. But why is it so bad?
Well, what people don't get is training in itself does nothing. Training is the stress. Training actually makes you weaker. So when you're done with training, you're actually tighter, weaker, and at a lower performance level than before the workout. It's the rest between the workouts that the biologic adaptation occurs. But if you're shortchanging yourself and not allowing that adaptation to occur, then you're always going to be in a chronic state of fatigue. Your body will see that. You'll have all these stress hormones going, the cortisol and so forth. Your body, in its wisdom, will then attempt to preserve you because it sees itself under constant threat from this overworking out. And fat storage is one of those survival mechanisms, you see, because it's laying down a rapid store of body fat because it's saying, hey, man, I'm going to need this fat in the future. It's kind of like a callus on your hand, If you rub the skin every day, right, you're going to rub the hand raw. But if you, let's say, rub with a file or something on the hand, but then you allow a day or two to pass, you'll get like a little bit thicker skin developing over it, and soon you'll have like a little protective callus. But if you're just rubbing every day, that adaptation never occurs.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you have like a big sore spot in your hand because you never allowed that adaptation to occur. So the exercise itself is of no consequence whatsoever. You need that adaptation time. And the more strenuous the workout, the longer it takes for the adaptation. So
that's that's clear. That's very clear. I was wondering about the stress hormones it generates. Cortisol is getting a lot of
publicity.
Flack. Publicity. It's very popular to demonize cortisol. You think that's you think it's true? You think that's on the money?
Well, let's put it this way. In ancient times, cortisol was our friend because when we didn't have such a plentiful food supply. So when you didn't know where your next meal was coming, you needed to lay down a rapid layer of body fat, and you needed to be able to access and use the proteins from your muscles to keep yourself alive. Great thing in a time of starvation.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the plentiful food supply, it works against us. So now people are eating and producing all this cortisol, but the stress is no longer, that of a hunter-gatherer, where you're fasting for maybe a day or two because you're between, kills in the hunt. Now it's all emotional stuff. So, emotional stress rather than physical stress, which is still, it's part of that survival mechanism, but it works against people in modern times.
I find that, I get that.
It enabled us to survive as a species during lean times.
Yes.
But now it's not so lean.
Now it's old hardware that's actually...
Yeah, it's old hardware. So it's kind of like outlived its usefulness for modern man. Who knows what kind of, adaptations that human beings are going to make in the next few years.
I don't think biology moves fast enough for that. I think we need to be aware of the fact that we're running on old hardware and we need to, change our behavior around that.
Although, that's one of the arguments that the paleo people use, we have the same genetics that we did. That's bullshit. There's been genetic adaptations within just the last 1,000 years.
Yeah, but significant enough to, I mean, if you look at...
the species is always evolving.
True. But let's for example, take a look at, I think the paleo guys, their chain of reasoning is like, all right, we don't differ that much genetically from a person that lived 20,000 years ago. They digested certain types of food a lot better than we would. They ate specific kinds of foods, and we're built to digest those kinds of foods. And what we're eating right now, we weren't built, optimally to digest those because we haven't changed that much biologically since 20,000 years ago.
That's been disproven already.
Yeah, that's been disproven. All right.
There's been plenty of people that have shown that that's just simply not true. One thing for sure, your diet's working for you if you're not fat.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take diet. How do you know your diet's working? One, you're not fat. You're lean. You can see your abdominals in the mirror, and you don't have a big roll of fat hanging over your waist. You have great health. You don't have colds. You don't have flu. You're not always coming down with a cold, every few weeks.
Yeah.
Your diet's probably working. Your teeth and your gums are healthy. You don't have you don't have cavities. You don't have bleeding gums. You're healthy. You're taking a good bowel movement every day. You're not constipated. So at least you're having a good bowel movement every morning, maybe a couple during the day. Oh, your system is working. Don't change anything. Yeah. You're doing fine. Your skin is clear. You don't have pimples or boils. You're doing fine. You don't have eczema. your skin is healthy, your eyesight is clear, you know, you have a nice sheen to your skin, your hair is lustrous, you're a healthy person.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't change a damn thing. You're doing great.
It's working for
But
you.
if people can't answer those questions, well, then maybe they better take a hard look at what they're doing. And, you know, one of the things that's been demonized by a lot of these, you know, like the ketogenic group, the paleo group, you know, the fruits, the fructose, such bullshit. I've never seen anyone get fat on apples. In fact, I work with a lot of fighters to help them make weight, both, you know, MMA, jiu-jitsu guys, wrestlers. I do a lot of online personal training. I have put many guys on fruit-based diets with fantastic results, getting leaner, plenty of energy, energy to work off on. You know, you're not going to get fat eating berries and apples and, you know, things like that. But one thing, it doesn't make sense for a Nordic man or a guy here in the Northern Europe to be eating bananas and pineapple.
Well, we eat fruit, but we would like some steak with that as well.
Well, you have your locally produced stuff. I'm not saying don't eat the steak. I'm just saying that if you're really trying to lose a lot of body fat, fruit-based diets can be very, very helpful.
Sounds interesting. What I found very interesting about this is I noticed you use very common sense to determine whether a diet is working for you or not, because basically the list you ran through, because before the podcast, Wigert showed you a picture of a native tribe from Brazil, and the first thing you started doing was, oh, these guys look healthy. Look at their skin. Look at their hair. They have the right amount of body fat. I mean,
and really nice facial features, nice cheekbones. You know, they don't have the crooked teeth. You know, that was a result of overly processed foods. You know, the teeth get crowded. There was a very interesting guy, Weston Price. Perhaps you heard of this guy that went all over the world checking out indigenous peoples.
Yeah. I think he has one on Iboga as well.
There's a whole,
that's that. Oh, that guy.
I think he's doing that.
I think nativenutrition.com or something based on his work. Basically, he looked at people, indigenous, healthy people. This is at a time in the early 1900s where you could still find unspoiled people living apart from civilization. And he looked at many, many different people with every kind of macronutrient ratio you could imagine.
Yeah.
He looked at the Inuit and the northern Canadian Indians, and they were eating pretty much fat and protein.
Yeah.
You know, with just a very small amount of plant stuff. You know, mostly the contents of the stomach. They would slit open the stomach, put it into the cook pot, and they would stew that. That was about the only plant material they get most of the year. Maybe
half-digested plant material from the prey they caught.
From the prey they caught.
Wow.
Maybe a little bit of berries or something, but nothing grows up there.
No.
Yet they were incredibly healthy and strong and lean and not fat. But he did note that they had very short lifespans. They died sooner than any other group he studied. Then he looked at some Amazon Indians, and they had like an 80% carbohydrate intake. Very low protein. There was a group in Switzerland that lived up in the mountains, very remote. They were nomadic dairy herdsmen, living primarily off the dairy products. Same thing with some of the Mongolian tribes he studied. Very healthy people, but they lived primarily off the milk and cheese of their animals. The people he was most impressed with were the Polynesian people.
Fish.
They were eating taro root, which is a big starchy root. I don't know whether you've had taro. That was their staple. Taro is starch, pure starch. Similar compound to, let's say, a sweet potato, but then fish and coconut.
I've been there. I've actually eaten that.
Magnificent people.
Is it nice?
Together with barracuda. Yeah, well, yeah, it's nice. Well, if you go to French Polynesia, man, you see people going out with canoes and getting back with a barracuda.
With dinner.
Yeah,
I
told it before in the podcast. I mean, actually, we met a Maorian guy. Maorian. He came from. You have two islands, like Tahiti and.
New Zealand.
No. Hold on. Why do I know the name? Moorea. That's the name. So I went.
Never heard of it.
I went to Moorea and I just.
Me too. I actually taught jiu-jitsu there for 3 months. They were preparing for the Society Island Tournament Championships, and there was actually a prison guard there that was like leading a group of jiu-jitsu guys, And I actually promoted him to...
How cool is that? I
purple
remember
belt.
that I went around the island with a scooter, and
Yeah, it's so much fun, isn't it?
it was it's a beautiful island. But I remember to see one judo school. I was like, wow, it would be awesome to have some do the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here.
There's a physical education teacher that works at the agricultural school. He's a French guy.
Oh yeah,
But he teaches health and PE. He has a whole jiu-jitsu setup at his house.
Cool.
And people go over there and just train.
Well, next time when I go there. Anyway, I met a guy who was a local, and he just made his money with doing tattoos the original way, like the actually.
That's so cool, man.
They do it with bones,
Painful,
you know. Yeah, like the bones of animals, and they just ink you up. And he went out spearfishing. He was like, "Go on the canoe with me." And I just stayed on the canoe. He's like, "I'll be back in a few minutes." It's like in a few minutes, and he just went under, you know, with no equipment, just his glasses and a spearfish. And like 5 minutes later, he comes back with a fucking barracuda. You know,
Be honest, man. After 3 minutes,
like,
you were sweating. You were like, "Is he coming back?"
Shit. Yeah, I was like, actually, I saw a lot of sharks this afternoon when I did my shark feeding trip. So this is not the best place to be. Sun is going down, and he just came up with a barracuda. So
some of these guys can hold their breath so long.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But back to my point about Weston Price, by the way, I didn't. His conclusion was, there is no one diet of man. There is no perfect diet. You know, there's many perfect diets, and the human genome is so adaptive that you could pretty much learn to adapt on almost any kind of diet. So whether it be 80% carb, 10% protein and fat, or whether it be 80% fat and protein and 20%, it doesn't matter. What people have to do, especially in modern society, experiment.
Yeah.
And if you're having gas and you're farting when you eat, your digestion isn't working.
Yeah.
If you're burping and having heartburn, you're doing something wrong. If you're gaining weight or you're fat, you're just eating too goddamn much. But also, it may be the way you're eating. It may be the way you're mixing your foods.
Do you subscribe to separating carbs from? Yeah.
I'm very much into food combining.
All right.
Just as a way of simplifying your food.
Could you give the basics of that real quick?
Yeah, I follow the work of Dr. John Tilden, a turn-of-the-century American physician. He was a doctor who treated his patients not with drugs. He was anti-drug and anti-pharmaceutical. He treated people with fasting and nutrition and diet.
Okay.
And he found that the simpler you make your meals, the better. And just for simplicity's sake, he divided food into 3 basic groups. Starch, which would be like your potatoes or any grains or rice or anything like this. Fruits, and protein foods. And protein would be eaten with a green salad or non-starchy vegetables. Your starches could be eaten alone or eaten with also green vegetables. The fruit could be eaten alone, or it could be mixed with certain types of dairy and or seeds or nuts.
Yogurt.
Just depend. Yeah, like a yogurt or quark. Here in Northern Europe, you have wonderful dairy products that I really enjoy. I love that quark.
Yeah, it's good
Wish
stuff.
I could get it back in the States.
You're not allowed to bring it, are you?
No. They
you can't
grab
pass
all
it.
that stuff. But that's one that they don't have, which is delicious. But it's very simple. And I've pretty much eaten that way all my life. Now, if you're fat or overweight, the first thing you should cut is the starches. So you could have like a fruit-based meal, a protein vegetable-based meal, and either another fruit meal or maybe another protein vegetable meal. And you can keep your weight under control. For the most part, when you're fat, you don't need the extra starch calories.
Yeah. Regarding starch, bread counts as starch, right?
Breads, grains, cereals, muesli, oatmeal.
Any bread types that would be okayish if you. In Holland, I have I don't know if how you translate it. Spelt? Is that saying it?
Yeah, it's an ancient wheat.
Yeah.
It was actually the staple of the Spartans.
I like it already.
Yeah. Barley was the staple of the Roman soldiers, and the Spartans spelt and some barley. So people that think that you need to just gouge yourself with all this high protein, there was no whey protein in those days. There was no protein gouging. These guys ate moderate protein diets, grain-based, and they conquered the world. They were the baddest of the bad in their day. These were tough guys. They were eating primarily grain as a staple. So, that's why I say that to demonize grains as being the scourge of civilization. That's just simply not true.
That's not true. But why does it work so well if you're overweight and you start cutting the starches?
Calorie reduction. It's just simply a matter of cutting.
Heavy caloric load.
Yeah.
All right.
And, like I say, even children recognize the fact that, generally speaking, when you're fat, getting rid of the starches is just a really good way to cut calories. You just don't need them. Starches are energy. It's pure energy.
Yep.
And, if you're really, really heavy and overweight, you don't need energy. You want to go catabolic. So, just get rid of all extra energy so your body's forced to tap into its unstored body fat.
Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to say to your listeners, I am not a dietitian. I have no degree in nutrition, but I have been feeding myself and
For a while now.
And a lot of the stuff I just learned as a trainer and as a conditioning coach. I've been working out for 53 years, longer than most of your listeners have been alive. You do learn a few things in those times. And I have had some very high-level mentors. Many of my mentors did have PhDs, and I learned from these guys. They really helped me quite a bit. But, diet's an emotional, controversial thing.
Yeah.
That's why I like Weston Price. He says, hey, man, there's no so-called perfect diet. The best diet for a person is the diet they can live with. And then you just look at all those symptoms we talked about. There's more than one right diet.
But I think he would agree that the way that we are eating right now and the stuff that gets thrown into our food and the amounts of sugar that you take, I mean, those are obviously less optimal than, for example, just clean meat.
You definitely want to try to get rid of this over-processed stuff,
Yeah.
The GMOs, that's another thing that's a big controversial thing.
Yeah, what's your opinion on that?
I just don't know what to make out. There was just a big paper that just came out recently where there was many high-level scientists that said there's nothing wrong with the GMO stuff. But I don't know whether they're being paid off by Monsanto Foods.
Yeah.
You just don't know. I mean, you read this stuff and you see this stuff, but who's paying for the research? That's why, the people into hardcore science and just, it got to be science and double-blind studies. First of all, I don't know. I'm not a scientist. Do you know how to read a scientific paper?
No, I don't.
Do you? I don't. I mean, is it good science?
When is it
bad
scientific?
science?
Yeah.
Who paid for the study?
I do.
I mean, a lot of times you don't even know who paid for it because it's a company that paid for it that's owned by another company that's owned by another company.
Yeah.
And so often these guys will come up with a result, that the company wants.
I think we've seen it happen with...
You can't trust it, man.
No, with climate change, I mean, it's obvious. It obviously happened there. But the thing with GMOs is that even though I think you should be very careful what you put into your body when it comes to nutrition, especially if it's made in a lab, you should be aware of that. I think it's also a big frustration that, for example, Greenpeace is blocking the use of some of these products in nature because they're afraid of the biodiversity while it could solve serious starvation problems. And I think that's the whole...
That's what the scientists' argument
Yeah.
is. They're saying, well, wait a second. All we're doing is just making hybrids, of things that grow in nature that are more resilient and give you a better yield that could really solve the problems of world starvation.
Yep.
So that is a point. And maybe even if they aren't the healthiest, still it's a lot less healthy to starve to death.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
I
have another question related to that, by the way. We had a guy here in the studio. He was a futurologist, and we talked about printing of food. And then we got into...
you mean like one of those...
food printers. Yeah, just like Star Trek. You're able to print your food now. And then we started talking about meat and the ecological costs, related to meat. Everybody's seen Cowspiracy. And then he got to talking about meat made in a lab. So if it was grown in a lab and the creature wouldn't be suffering and it wouldn't be, giving all the gas that a cow produces. My question is, would you eat that? We have a discussion. I would eat it in a moment. It sounds like a perfect solution for the problem, but...
I'd like to eat some right now, actually.
I would try.
Sounds delicious. One of the things that really intrigued me, speaking of meat, animal proteins, is cricket protein.
Yeah.
Protein from insects.
Insects.
Dude, I would eat I would eat that anytime. The powder, it doesn't bother me. But my father, by the way, was an entomologist who worked for the United States Federal Department of Agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
And he was an insect expert, an entomologist. So my brother and I always had the most magnificent insect collections, you know. I used to,
the propped up behind the glass with the...
well,
or live
in
ones.
those days, being little kids, we had the old cigar box with the little pins.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun. I learned so much about it. But bugs always intrigued me. And as a protein source, wow.
Yeah.
You know, like you read about these locust infestations,
Yes.
like in like places like Ethiopia or Somalia, and you see a cloud of dude, why not just eat those guys?
Like the Barbie.
Yeah, man. They're delicious. I've had cricket protein. It's good, man.
Yeah.
I think you can actually buy it in Holland now in certain supermarkets.
Yeah, it's getting up a bit. It's a lot of protein and it's far more friendly, environment
Sustainable,
friendly.
yeah.
You have
Very
these
sustainable.
cricket farms are really easy to maintain.
To grow.
Yeah.
Locust too.
But the reason behind the question was if, for example, if you would eat meat from a lab and it would prove unhealthy for you, that there are actual solutions to these bio problems we have through, for example, GMOs. But I understand people being very critical of, you know, just eating that. But if it's just the hybrids, like you said, well, you know.
Why not?
Can I
Who
ask-
knows what's going to happen in the future, you know?
Yeah.
There's so many different ways it could go. I think of that movie, Wall-E. You
Yeah.
ever see the little
Yes,
animation?
yes, of course.
You know, where humans have basically lost their ability to move.
Yeah.
Who was it? Stephen Hawking said that, you know, really the most dangerous threat to mankind isn't even global warming, it's artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Our machines will get too smart for us, and who knows what's going to happen. It could end up like Wall-E. You get so dependent that you just literally lose your ability to function. You just have these short little limbs with a little finger to push the buttons, and
Yeah.
Food gets brought to
when
you.
the food, you know, when the machines break down or they become sentient and develop their own consciousness
Yeah.
and decide, hey, what are we keeping these fat humans alive for?
But I think we already mentioned another possibility as well with Pokemon Go, which is technology doing the exact opposite. But
Doing the exact opposite.
you think a lot about where the future is going technology-wise?
You know, to tell the God's honest truth, I don't really worry myself about these things. I believe in a higher power. Call it whatever you want, universal mind, God, whatever. And I trust in that power in all my affairs. And it leads me to do the right thing at the right time and be in the right place at the right time, say the right thing at the right time. And I really have tremendous faith in this higher nature, which is in all of us. You know, you're a God, I am God, you know.
Yes.
It's all part of that energy, however you want to define that. Whether even if you're an atheist, you would have to admit that there's something greater than yourself.
Something is going on.
So I try to tap into that at all times. So I don't concern myself with these things. You know, I just allow myself to be led to do the right thing. It's almost like that little observer within. You just get the right thought at the right time, the right idea,
Yeah.
and it's led me pretty much through my whole life. So I
Did you always have that peace, or is that something that
No.
came with the years?
came with the years.
Because if I listen to you describe it, I'm very envious. That sounds very comforting and peaceful.
It is, but it didn't happen overnight.
No.
You know, and I had to reprogram my thoughts. I used meditation, affirmation, and prayer.
Affirmations.
Affirmation.
That's interesting. We had a guy here, David Allen, from Getting Things Done, the book, and he wrote, he did affirmations in Sanskrit in his head every morning.
Yeah.
So how do you use affirmations?
Just in English, really positive affirmations. Like, for example, I woke up this morning, and the first thing that I said, while I was still kind of in that theta state, not quite awake,
Yeah.
but still
Theta
not
as
asleep.
in referring to brainwaves.
Yeah, the brain waves.
Exactly.
You know, there's theta, gamma, delta, alpha brainwave, and as you sleep, you go through these different brainwaves. You can actually, during meditation, create the theta state and go into like this kind of semi-consciousness where you're not really awake or asleep. And that's usually just before you fall asleep or just before you wake up in the morning. It's a very good time to reprogram your mind with good positive thoughts.
Is that the same state hypnotists put you in?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know that.
Higher suggestibility.
High suggestibility.
Because you probably do your affirmations in that period for a
in
reason.
that state.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what the monks do when they go into that kind of theta state. But at any rate, you know, a typical affirmation would be, today is the first day of the rest of my life. I will use this day productively, and I will enjoy every moment of this life. Today, I only see the good. Only good comes for me, and only good will come to me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You always have to have that feeling of gratitude, because it's the gratitude that sets the mood for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I practice gratitude every day too. Every time I see, I get like little notifications of every sale I make, every DVD download that's bought, any product I sell, I get like a little flash on my iPad or my iPhone, and I give thanks. Thank you for this money. And then you have to say why. Because it allows me to live in a 4-star hotel.
Mm-hmm.
It allows me to buy my dinner at a nice restaurant. Mm-hmm. It allows me the freedom to do what I want. It allows me the freedom to buy whatever I want on Amazon whenever I want. For whatever reason. It allows me to be rich and free as I was meant to be. And then you must say the 3 magic words: thank you, thank you, thank you. The magic words. This was something that U.S. Anderson used in his book, The Secret. The same type of mentality. Mm-hmm. There's a sister book to The Secret called The Magic, which is all about expressing gratitude.
Yeah.
Because what you get in your life is the sum total of all your positive, negative thoughts. If you think more negative thoughts in your life, then you will have more negative experiences. And if you can think more positive thoughts, it's the law of attraction.
Yeah, whatever get attention grows.
Exactly. If you're putting out hatred or fear or anger, you're going to only attract those things in your life.
I have a question about that. Do you think that, it's a discussion point amongst Wicked and me as well, law of attraction, is it something externally manifesting itself because of your mindset, or is it your perception of reality? You're just primed to perceive certain stuff that you wouldn't have thought if you, for example, wouldn't have had the, affirmation of gratitude.
Everything you've ever desired, ever wanted, is already here. You just have to recognize that it's already here.
Exactly.
And then it will manifest almost in an instant. And how quickly you get a manifestation is completely commensurate with the amount of faith you have in the process. Any fear, any doubt, any lack or limitation thinking, it will completely block the manifestation process. Mm-hmm. So how quickly these things happen. I know some people that have such a high level of consciousness, they can almost instantly manifest things. No. I'll tell you an interesting story. Now, you can think it's bullshit or not, but this guy is not a liar. He was my yoga teacher. His name is Sandro Remite. He was a Serb who lived in Australia. He served in the Vietnam War for the Australian Army. He was an illegal immigrant in Australia. He was caught. He was arrested. He was taken before the judge, and the judge says, you can either go to jail or you can go to Vietnam. He said, Vietnam. He went to the Australian Army, served in Vietnam, stayed, studied martial arts in Indonesia and throughout Asia, and then he eventually ended in India, and where he worked with Iyengar, very famous yogi, for 17 years. At one point, he meditated almost a year in a cave with his master, one of his other yoga masters. He said one night, they're around the fire, and he said, I thought I was really something because I could put both feet behind my head and do this tricky little yoga pose. He says, my yoga master basically just waved his hand and pointed at a bunch of sticks, and a fire started. That's manifestation, my friend. He says, that's juice. He says, I thought I was something because I could do all these yoga poses, and here's a guy that actually had transcended, what we think of as the law of physics. So I don't know. That sounds pretty far-fetched. It sounds like, woohoo.
We need YouTube.
This sounds like something that should have been recorded with a smartphone, yes.
All the blue bots are going to be jumping on that one, right?
Yeah. Well, I get that. I mean...
But I know this guy not to be a liar. I mean, this guy speaks the honest truth. So I don't know what he saw, but what it reminded me of is things you hear, let's say even in the Christian Bible, the Christ walking on water, the Christ performing miracles. And supposedly, he was, as an example, his example was not to be worshipped as a god, but that you can do these things too. I mean, if you look all through the Bible, he was basically saying, hey, you have the same power in you as I do, as an example. So
We had
I'm
a guy
thinking
here-
we have a lot of innate powers of manifestation to manifest goodness and beauty, but it all starts with controlling your thoughts.
I think that is true. I also think it's very hard. We had a preacher here the other day, and he has a church on Aruba, and he told us about a miracle he witnessed, about a healing. There was a woman came to him, and she was blind, and he prayed for her, and after that her sight was restored. And I fully believe that he believes that is true. For him, that happened 100%. But I don't know, it might be me or the way my cynicals, but somewhere in my mind, there's that nagging question, that can't be true, right? That has to be proven first.
You probably have
I find
to
it
see
so hard. I would love to believe it, but, you know.
Well, see, that's the whole thing about the manifestation process. If you don't believe it, for sure,
It won't happen.
Yeah. Believe and achieve. So, you know, it all comes down to faith, the power of faith, and the power of the belief system. But I have seen damn near miracles myself, you know, of things. There was, you know, I've gotten out of some scrapes. Things just manifested and just became perfect. The thing that you have to really watch, though, you got to be careful and not get into what we call spiritual pride.
Spiritual pride.
Pride, where you start to think, wow, look at me, I can do this manifestation. That
I'm so enlightened.
That heads you to a real fall at some point. So you got to keep that humbleness, you know, about you, and not get too full of yourself with this manifestation thing.
Yeah, if you look,
you got to be very, very careful with that spiritual pride, because you know, pride goeth before the fall, as they say. And believe me, you're gonna manifest some type of negative experience. So the way that you don't get too full of yourself and get too prideful about the whole thing is keep that humility, and that comes from gratitude, by being always grateful to the source, whatever you think that is. You know, an atheist could still follow this whole principle and still manifest. Just through, it's called the science of mind, or mental science. It's all about thought control.
I considered myself an atheist until I started talking to, for example, Paul Smith, who was a guy who got into non-duality. And non-duality is basically the atheist version of we are all one. There's one big source, and everything that separates us is ego, which is just manifested in your brain. Question about that. You talked about, you know, staying humble, not, you know, spiritual pride, fear. These are all things manifested by ego. As a man who has had some life experience, how have you seen that progress in your mind? For example, if I look at myself as a 25-year-old, I can smile at the things my ego made me do. I can imagine that if I have your age, I look at myself right now and I can do the same. Is that true?
Absolutely true. As a matter of fact, many of these things I couldn't have done when I was younger because I just wasn't ready for it. You know, the ego was so strong. I heard that a man is not able to critically think until he's over 60. I found that was true enough for me.
Yeah.
You know, once I got past that stage where everything was just, you know, where you just think you can beat the world, so to speak. You know? Don't get me wrong. I had manifested a lot of negative experiences in my life, but I understand why and how I did that, you know. And now I feel like I'm living on like a different plane, you know, like.
Looking back at that, was it necessary to make those mistakes?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think for me, I've made every mistake in the book. I've done so many stupid things. It's unbelievable.
That's comforting to hear.
A lot of the things I'm ashamed of, man.
We got time. So what's on number one?
Let's do a little rundown here.
Some of these things I wouldn't even want to say in public. But yeah, I've done some things, shameful things, you know, that I'm very sorry for now.
But
everyone. I mean, at the same time, I realized that I can't be here if I wasn't there. So, you know, it's all in the learning experience.
Yeah, and being aware of the fact that, well, that wasn't the best thing to do at that moment, and being able to, you know, change your behavior in the future as well because of that. I think that's very valuable.
Your perception at that moment is that it's the right thing to do.
Well, you can't do anything other than what you do.
Yeah.
You know, people always second guess themselves. Oh, if I would have done this.
No,
but in truth, you were only able to do that one thing, and there was nothing else you could have done.
Yeah. That touches the subject of free will.
Yes.
Is there free will?
Yes and no.
Because I just heard you say there's nothing else you can do. So that suggests determinism.
At that level of consciousness, that's all you're capable of doing.
Yes.
And in order to be able to do something of a higher nature, you have to have a higher level of consciousness about what it is, who and what you are. But when you're a young man, you don't have that.
No.
All you're thinking about is pussy all the time and getting laid and
sounds about right. Yes.
Food,
money.
You're pretty much into the senses. Your five senses, sensualism. Now modern people are very much hedonistic. It's all about sensual pleasures and food and comfort and all the bourgeois comforts.
Yeah.
I like bourgeois. I mean, I'm definitely bourgeois. I like my comforts, and I want to live a comfortable life.
Yeah.
I don't want to live the life of an ascetic, and
But the difference between you and a lot of people is that you've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable, and a lot of people aren't comfortable with being uncomfortable anymore. I think that's a big problem.
Being uncomfortable, it's okay, man. If you're not sure, you learn to control a lot of these negative impulses and so forth. A lot of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, the breath, the breathing. If you're caught up in upper chest breathing, you have clavicular breathing, intercostal breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. If you're breathing in this part of the apparatus, you never can be comfortable. You're always in fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're always in a negative mindset, negative stress hormones. It's virtually impossible to control your mind or your thought because you're in a perpetual fear state, and you're always hungry. You're chronically hungry, and you're not getting the most valuable nutrient of them all, right? I mean, anybody could pretty much fast 30 days with no food. You could survive. You could. You can go without 3 or 4 days without water. You could. But you can't go more than a few minutes without air. Yet everyone is missing that vital element. They're not getting oxygenated because they're not using the breathing apparatus. But what does that do to your psyche and your thoughts? It's very hard to have positive thoughts when you're in a chronic panic state. That's why the breath relates to all of this that we're talking about. So you got this, this duality here. You got this physical shell, and then you got this higher consciousness, but one depends on the other.
Yeah.
So if you're not taking care of the horse that the spirit is riding, man, if you're beating the horse or flogging the horse, you're using all sorts of chemicals and drugs and stimulants, you're not going to be able to develop much in the way of higher consciousness because you're plagued by too many physical ailments, sickness and pain and suffering. How can you think of higher things when you're just chronically drawn back into the body because of dis-ease?
Or stress.
I've been reading a few books from Alberto Villoldo. He's a shaman. He's an American anthropologist, and he studied shaman for 20 years or something. He wrote a book about, it's called One Spirit Medicine, where he goes into the shamanistic way of getting healthy, but also scientific way. And he basically explains that enlightenment can't be reached without a healthy brain. So your brain is all cramped up with too much grains, too much sugars, and it's just not working well. And I fully agree on that one. If your nutrition is not very well, he suggests a lot of supplements that detoxify your liver, your brain, and he goes into it pretty well.
Everything psychological is biological. And the breathing, that's something that I'm wondering after hearing you say that. Does diaphragmatic breathing, does that actually regulate, for example, cortisol or other hormonal levels that would influence your mind state?
Oh, absolutely. You stay calm. Even in a dangerous situation, you can remain calm and detached. And all the yogis knew this. All the Qigong masters knew this. All the Tai Chi masters knew this. In Japan, they called it Qi. In China, they called it Qi. In yoga, they call it pranayama. But it's been around. People have known this for, thousands of years.
The life force.
And it's the life force, the life energy. Until you're in touch with that, not much is going to work. Can modern science measure any of the stuff we're talking about? No, not at all. It flies in the face of modern science. Although science is beginning to discover more and more of the stuff we're talking about as being real. There was, speaking of positivity, there have been some studies done on people that are prayed for in hospitals.
Seen it.
Who heal much faster than people that they just don't do any prayer. People that they lay the hands on, literally laying of the hands like they talk in the Bible, these people would heal quicker?
Is it with or without them knowing that they're being prayed for?
I don't know. That's a good
Because if you know that you're being prayed for, that might give you a good feeling. That might, accelerate the healing.
It could possibly do that.
I think this is why we do double blinds, by the way. But
that's a good question. I'll have to look at that. But so what?
If it helps,
it works. That's true. Yeah.
What if I gave you a pill that was just nothing but sugar, but I told you it's going to do something for you,
excellent.
and it did? It's like,
use it 100%. But
give me that sugar, baby.
But in determining the mechanism behind it, it would be interesting to know whether or not the people knew that they were being prayed for. Because if it works without them knowing, that would actually prove the power of prayer.
It could.
Or else it would just be a fancy placebo. But if a placebo still heals you, I think you can still use a placebo. That's not a problem.
We had these discussions so many times, man.
Yeah,
it's
but
just,
here's the thing, too. Who cares how it works?
Yeah.
If it works, it works. It's like when I was taking the task about that astrology thing on the Rogan show. Right? Who gives a fuck how it works? I can't explain how it works. I don't know how the guy does it. All I know is that it's given me good results. How can anyone argue with that?
I can.
And if it's placebo, it's placebo, and I'm happy.
I get that. But for this, with the same, if we would have applied that line of reasoning to everything, we wouldn't have known that, for example, willow contains the stuff that certain painkillers are made of. Because if you see that plant does a particular thing to a body, you might want to know what exactly it is in that plant that causes the effect of pain killing. So you can put it in little pills, so that's easier than just chewing on bark.
Or you could just chew on the bark.
Yeah, exactly.
And just be happy with that, and just know that it works.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. There are physical laws in the universe.
Exactly.
Now, I talked about one example of a guy that supposedly waved his hand and created a fire. That seems to defy the physical laws as we know it. Christ walking on water. I don't know whether that was just a hallucination of his disciples or whether that happened. But
it's not impossible. I saw Dynamo do it.
There are
no, but seriously, he did it. And
sorry,
Dynamo. He's an illusionist, and he did this
That's the name. He's an illusionist.
Yes,
and he did.
Exactly.
An illusionist.
But he walked on water. We didn't know. He used the trick. So it is actually possible.
Chris Angel did the same thing in Las Vegas.
Awesome.
Chris Angel.
It makes me go like, how the hell did he do that?
Yeah, but that's why he's called an illusionist.
I know.
Right?
I know.
All right. Cool.
Chris Angel walked across a Las Vegas swimming pool.
In
his bare feet, with people literally swimming underneath.
Exactly.
him.
That's fucking weird.
Yeah, and he did it also.
Cool.
And I mean, it was actually televised, underwater camera.
Yeah.
No one can figure out how he did it.
Cool.
But there are things that we can't explain. And did he walk on water, or how did he walk on water? I don't know. But do I care? No. I don't have to explain it. All I have to know is it happened. And if something's working for you in your life and you are feeling good about it, I don't see why you have to pick it apart and try to figure it out. For me, the fact that it's working and it's not causing any harm to myself or causing harm to any other human being, for me, that's good enough.
I think that's relatable to something I actually heard you say, Wigert. He had a talk about psychedelic experiences once, and if you go on a psychedelic trip, you can see stuff that's so mind-boggling and makes you feel like you see the divine and makes you a real humble person. Does it really matter that it's just a substance in your brain that's firing off synapses? No, it doesn't. The experience is no less real. So, you get the feeling and all the benefits from that. I think it's in that same vein of thinking.
It's the same idea. Because, ultimately, it all comes down to the mind anyway.
And the lessons learned.
And the lessons learned,
Yeah. Reminds me of a talk that I had with an apprentice shaman, a Brazilian guy who I just came out of ayahuasca ceremony and brought him back to the airport. He had to go back to Brazil. And he talked English very well, so it was my chance to ask him some questions. Like, dude, all right, we've seen this, 3 crazy ceremonies, and it's like, tell me, what's the craziest shit you've seen? And he actually told that one of the shamans in the forest in Brazil, during ceremony, went with his hand into somebody's body, and he got something black kind of stuff out.
We've heard the stories before, yeah.
Yeah, he's on, he's on DMT. Wild to see it. But, these stories goes on and on. I've seen a guy on Aubrey Marcus's podcast where he's learning shamanism, and he's actually sucking out the blood of somebody's leg
without penetrating the skin. And he's just spitting it out, and without the skin cracking. You know, it's kind of, I don't know. He's just like that. He has a center, you know, there in shamanism. I think it's called Bloom Morpho Center or something. It's just crazy shit, you know. But are you going to argue? You've been in ayahuasca sessions. You know how weird it can be.
Yeah, and that's the whole point I'm trying to make. It doesn't really matter.
And
it doesn't matter where the experience where it comes from. I know I'm tripping balls, but I still have the feeling. You know.
True.
So it doesn't.
And your feelings are real, and they should be respected. It's like a very good friend of mine. He actually is a PhD also in biochemistry, like Otto Rolf. He also is a board-certified nutritionist from Temple Medical School. At one point, he was diagnosed with inoperable brain cancer. He had a tumor in his brain the size of a golf ball.
Jeez.
Right behind his eye.
Yeah.
He was told, sorry, you're going to die. There's nothing modern science can do. We can't operate in this because it will kill you. The chances of you dying. So this guy did everything. He was drinking marijuana tea.
Yeah.
He was
CBD
taking
oil.
every freaking herb that you could think of that was supposed to be good for cancer. He went to a psychic surgeon who supposedly reached his hands and pulled out this stuff. He did everything because his life was on the line. He went back. Symptoms disappeared. He did lose some hearing in his left ear, which never returned.
Yeah.
But he lost his eyesight, but the eyesight came back. He went and had another MRI, and the golf ball had shrank down to the size of a little BB, like smaller than a pea.
Yeah.
And all symptoms were gone. Now, how did that happen? He doesn't know, because he did what we call the shotgun approach. He did everything that he could think of. He doesn't know what caused it or how it happened. Was it the psychic surgeon? Was it the marijuana tea? Well, I forgot. He had like a dozen herbs he was taking. I forgot he was fasting. He was doing all this stuff. What caused it? He doesn't know. And you know what? He don't care.
He's alive.
Because the doctor that diagnosed him is now dead. He took a nice piss in that guy's grave, you know?
That sounds a little spiteful, but I know what you're getting at. I know.
He didn't do that.
I think it's funny when you talk about these subjects. Because yesterday I was looking at one of the latest Joe Rogan podcasts where you talk about your astrology friend. And I looked at the comments on YouTube, and man,
I got killed.
This is the internet, you know. They got vicious.
They take any chance to jump on somebody, you know. Especially if they think their hero, Joe Rogan, which is an awesome guy. I love Joe, and he's always treated me extremely well. He's been a real mentor to me, actually. Matter of fact,
to many people, to us.
Just bringing me on the show really helped me tremendously get my word out and my message. But see, as soon as they perceived that he was on me, of course, they're jumping on the bandwagon. And, you know, oh, Steve, what's happened to him? Oh, he used to be such a great trainer, but he's into woo-woo stuff. And somebody had to straighten out the poor old guy. He must have gone senile and his old, you know, I saw some of those comments too.
You know what irked me about that one is not as much that they jumped on the topic, but that they, I saw some guys, I stopped listening after. And after the astrology bit, there was some really good
stuff.
There was some really good information about isometrics and concentric and eccentric training and training with overload and time and attention. Like, you're missing out on all this great stuff. And only because he subscribed to some thoughts with astrology. Well, you know, you might or might not agree, but who really cares? Because the fitness and the nutrition stuff is still awesome.
That was the next stuff to come on.
Yeah.
Someone told me, I never listened to the end of that show, but I did hear that one of my former clients who listens to him regularly, said that he actually, towards the end of the thing, he came back and then made an apology for lambasting astrology. Did you guys hear that?
I don't know.
Don't know.
She said he had actually gone on and said, hey, for you guys that are into astrology, I apologize. I don't know whether that's true.
Oh, he's open-minded. I mean,
don't know.
Sure, yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
But all I know is the emperors and kings and presidents for time immemorial have used their astrologers. You know? Supposedly the three magi that found Jesus in the manger in Bethlehem were astrologers.
But what does that mean? Since we're touching this subject,
let's talk about it. We're on YouTube too, Michelle. So
I'm gonna get killed on YouTube again.
No, but I'm just worrying what part of, because astrology is a broad term, but you really subscribe to, for example, a horoscope. If you read a horoscope, that's a part of astrology. No, not that.
Two people born on the same day.
Yeah.
You know, December 3rd, 1952.
Exactly.
Right, at 12 noon. Another guy born December 3rd, 1952, 12 noon, might have completely different charts.
Exactly.
But with a guy that really knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
12:01 as opposed to noon would make it different. It would be a lot of similarities, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It would be completely different. And like my guy says, look, man, anybody can set up a chart. That's the easy part. It's the interpretation that's the really tough stuff. And I say to him all the time, hey, are you ever wrong? He said, yeah, sometimes. He said, but I'd like to know when I'm wrong. If I make a prognostication and you find it could be completely wrong or different, I want to know so I can fine-tune my system to make it even better.
Yeah. I don't have problems with systems like this. If this gives you a sense of purpose and it gives you a good feeling, I think it's fine. I think I only have problem with people that misuse it. For example, we've all heard it's psychics that, misuse their relation with people just to, keep tanking money and stuff like that. And when you use it in that way and it's, it doesn't really stand the test of the scientific method, then I think you should try and fight it.
I just pay him by the time.
Yeah.
I don't have enough money to take anyway, so.
Oh, well. But it was a great example of, the power of the internet.
The internet.
Yeah, and how it can...
and how people love to pile on.
Well, don't feed the trolls.
Yeah.
I mean, since there has been internet, there has been trolls. We are no strangers to this phenomenon. We started as trolls. I mean... We used to be in a little MMA community, and we had our fun as well with the internet because it's easy to get a rile out of people because it's anonymous.
Yeah, it's like something people do behind the anonymity of the keyboard.
Yeah.
And you're right. Some people just get off on, they have one hand of the mouse and one hand of the dick,
That was you, Michel. Yeah, I know.
Hey, we've all been there,
Yeah. The internet is a powerful place.
Can I? Because I want to ask you something. I have here. You've been talking about fasting a few times already.
Yeah. It's age-old practice for helping the body rebalance itself.
Yeah, I think I heard you on one of the Joe Rogan episodes talking about cell longevity, that it increases lifespan of a cell. Can you go into that?
They've looked at many, many different anti-aging techniques, and systematic undereating seems to be number one. The systematic underfeeding of laboratory animals can increase their lifespan by double, even triple in some cases. They've increased 2.5 times dogs' lifespans by underfeeding. I had a very practical experience. I had a cat that lived to 21 years old, and we only fed her once every other day. And this cat was spry and healthy. 21 years, my friend. Most house cats don't live much more than 14 years, 15 years. This cat was still going pretty good. And I had ferrets. You know what they are? They call it the European polecat ferret. They're kind of like a little weasel.
Yeah.
They're really cute, smart little thing.
Yeah.
I had them for my kids. And we underfed the ferrets, and their lifespan is about 5 years. Ours lived to 8 years, and they were healthy right up until the end. So
isn't that why Japanese people or Asian people get a lot older?
The Okinawans have like second highest lifespan in the world, and they practice this technique of 80%.
Yeah,
they pull away from the table before they're satisfied. They never overeat. They never eat to satisfaction. They always stop. They feel like they could eat a little bit more. It takes a lot of discipline. But anyway, fasting is a way of unburdening your digestive system. It takes a lot of energy to digest food. And if you are overburdening your digestion by mixing too many different things together or eating too often, guys that eat every 2 hours or, huge meals or whatever, you are really burdening the digestion and you're diverting energy away from your own immune system. So if you do start coming down with a cold symptom or you start getting some type of feelings like a sore throat or whatever, if you immediately stop eating, even just for a half a day, your immune system kicks into overdrive and is able to overcome whatever it is that's, trying to take over. And for longevity and health, regular fasting is just a great way to just rest the digestive system. It's been used forever. I think you read about all the great prophets, all of the great Greek philosophers were into fasting. Socrates, Plato, all these, Aristotle, they advocated, frugality with the food and fasting, simple diets. all the great sages, all the great Christian monks, all of the yogis, all of the Chinese philosophers, they were all into light eating and fasting. So it's empirical evidence. It's stood the test of time. But there's even been fasting clinics in modern Europe. Europeans, there was a Swede by the name of Pavel Orola from the Karolinska Institute that used fasting. This guy, Dr. John Tilden, I told you about earlier. So it has a long history of success with helping the immune system get strong and helping rid your body of disease and problems.
So describe fasting in a way, because I fast once a month for 24 hours.
Okay.
But you can do intermittent fasting.
You can do a daily fast, pushing your first meal back. Breakfast is a relatively modern invention. It was invented in order to sell cereal products for the farmers. It had as the cereal industry got big, breakfast cereal, that's when breakfast became the most important meal. Speaking of skewed science, there was all these studies saying, breakfast is the most important meal. It's bullshit. It was paid for by the cereal companies.
Wow. True, truly. But what about the whole thing of eating a big protein breakfast in the morning to make yourself anabolic as possible? That's
Tim Ferriss science.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's something to that,
you
right?
got it from Mookie. He was like in the first 30 minutes, you got to eat so much proteins for
when you wake up,
perfect absorption and stuff.
But yet I could show you guys like Ori Hofmeckler, that believes in just eating one big meal at the end of the day. And, healthy as a freaking horse.
Yeah.
And then he has a lot of, historical notes and empirical evidence to show that the one big meal at the end of the day is a really good way to go. So you'll find every kind of diet under the sun, but one thing for sure, when you stop eating food for any length of time, this is a great way to allow your body to kind of rest, garner its energy, and there's no doubt that lowering your calories or going really low in the calories is really, really good for helping preserve your life and increase lifespan.
Yeah. So what is your fasting routine?
I usually don't eat until between 10 and 11 every day, but I get up at 5. So, I'm up 4 or 5 hours before I'll break my fast with my first meal. Some people call that intermittent fasting. And anytime I have any hint of a cold, nasal, sinus, throat, I fly all the time. And that's the worst air you can imagine in those tin can airlines, recycled. Yet I'm never sick. I'm never sick. Why? Because I take care of my health with perfect eating, mostly raw fruits and raw vegetables, and fasting. As soon as I feel it, I'll just stop. I won't eat until I feel better.
You won't eat until you get better.
Until I get better. And I'll drink water.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I'll have maybe some tea.
Green juices?
No, I have done. Now, listen, if I absolutely have to produce, let's say, for example, I'm going to New York City tomorrow, as a matter of fact, flying. Let's say I get to New York, I start getting a head cold, but I have to teach a seminar. Just no way around it, right? I may go on a juice fast. So I'll make my digestion as easy as possible by eating something that's extremely digestible. Juice basically just goes right through your system.
So the idea
is
I
might do like Juice Press is all over New York, fantastic place. They make these raw organic juices. I might just go on a juice fast for a day or two. Not as good as water fast, but it still unburdens my digestion, allows my immune system to kick in into overdrive.
Yeah.
Tilden believed that the body is capable of pretty much defeating any kind of outside invader. I mean, he believed you could even beat the bubonic plague.
Yeah, so basically...
Or Ebola if, your immune system is strong enough.
Yeah, we have some Ebola here, so can you get the injection here?
Let's test this let's test this shit. I have a lab coat. Yeah.
It's all about the immune system, man.
Yeah.
I'll give an example. This is back in the day when I had my jiu-jitsu school. I had the first Brazilian jiu-jitsu school in the Eastern Coast. Before Renzo Gracie or anybody, Steve Maxwell and Maxercise. And we had an outbreak of ringworm in our school. And the guys were all freaking out and getting all hinky. Oh, you got to cleanse the mats. And it's like, dude, ringworm lives in your body and is passed from skin to skin contact. It can't live on outside surfaces. So it's not the mats, which we did scrupulously clean every night. So it wasn't that, because people were saying, oh, you should close down the school. It was bullshit. It was the immune systems were impaired. So one guy had a patch on, And he said, here, take that Band-Aid off. And he had this big, round, nasty, pus-looking thing on his arm. So I took an ink pen and I put a little X on my arm, and I took my finger and swabbed pus off his ringworm and rubbed it into my own skin.
These are details we don't want to know.
Just,
to prove a point, yeah.
To prove a point. And I says, hey, look at this. I'm not going to get ringworm, my friend, because my immune system is too strong. I'm not going to get sick.
Yeah.
Plus, your belief system, once again. I had a belief system that didn't allow for me to get sick.
Yeah.
If you don't believe in sickness and ill health, you're not going to attract it. So sure enough, within that next week or so, there was no ringworm that appeared on my body. Now, that being said, I have come down with ringworm. And that was because I left my immune system lower. I was doing some imbalanced things. Usually with me, it's when I get too hot, heat-producing foods. I don't know whether you know about Ayurvedic medicine. Ayurvedics,
which is like turmeric and
it's
stuff.
It's a yogic medicine. You know?
Turmeric and.
I'm a Pitta constitutional type. There's 3 well, anyway, I'm subject to heat-related problems. So for a person like me, spices and things are a terrible thing. I need to eat cooling foods. A hot, humid weather is not very good for me. I got to be careful not to allow myself to get overheated. Certain yoga postures create heat in the body. I got to avoid those. Certain breathing systems, like the one that Hickson uses, the breath of fire, that real rapid, that'd be a terrible thing for me.
What happens when you do it?
I get too hot. You build up too much internal heat. Okay. I got to keep my internal system nice and cool. So I use different types of pranayama breathing. It's like 15 different types of breathing in pranayama, each for different imbalances and for bringing balance to the body. At any rate, my point is that, yes, I am human and can get these things like anybody else, colds, flu, ringworm, whatever, But most of the time, I protect myself by keeping my immune system at a very, very high level. And when I get complacent or a little bit too egotastic and I lower my safeguards, lo and behold, I'll start to manifest some negative situation. So I immediately deny the situation. I'll use mental science to completely dismiss it, realize that this isn't part of my nature, and then I'll take physical steps along with the mental science to correct it.
Mental science is being aware of what's going on in your body.
Exactly, where I will use affirmations to affirm it away, because I know that my mind is in control of every cell of my body. So I will make sure that I get that juju going.
Yes.
And then I will also do practical things. Maybe I'll get not an antibiotic, but antifungal cream and put on there. Why not? I like tea tree, a natural. Or coconut oil is just amazing as an antifungal. You see what I'm saying? This is just like one little example where you use physical things in the physical realm, you use mental things in the metaphysical realm, and you can keep yourself quite balanced and quite healthy almost all the time.
What's your standpoint on balanced sleep? I heard you say you get up at 5. That immediately got me wondering, and what time do you go to bed?
Actually, I'm in bed pretty early, sometimes as early as 8 or 9 o'clock. But usually I like to read something dull.
It helps to sleep in.
It causes rapid eye fatigue. I read off my...
eye fatigue.
My Kindle.
Yeah. Oh,
and,
nice.
I use that kind of sepia low light, and the eye fatigue causes heavy eyelids, and you start to drift off to a nice...
to eliminate the blue light, right?
Yeah.
That's
I have that, like one of those apps that allows me just to drift into it. And I'll read some spiritually uplifting type thing, not too exciting, a little bit dull, where you have to kind of work to read it.
To tire the mind.
Yeah, and it kind of slows the mind down.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I got to admit, I'll watch something on my one of my TV stations that I can live stream. I like to watch comedies.
Yeah.
I love this thing on HBO Go. I use a VPN so I can illegally
stream Netflix in Holland.
Yeah. Actually, Netflix has all these blockers up. You can't get Netflix anymore.
I've noticed that.
I'm pissed off. I was watching
same here.
Peaky Blinders, and damn it, I got caught now. I have 2 episodes to go, and I can't watch it here and all.
And you have to download
and
again.
Every time I use the VPN, they say, it looks like you're using a VPN.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I watch things like Flight of the Condors. I think that's so funny. Or I've been rewatching all the old Jerry Seinfelds. Hilarious.
Jerry, yeah.
Very uplifting, funny, light.
Not too heavy.
Nothing heavy, nothing. I won't watch Game of Thrones. That's for daytime watching.
Cool.
Too heavy.
It is heavy. No, seriously.
Violent.
Yeah, it's heavy. Yeah.
There's one scene that's still stuck in my mind I saw from the first season. That's the guy with the bucket and the rat to the stomach, and they put a torch. That hasn't left my... I don't want to see that stuff anymore.
Why did you put that back in my mind?
I'm sorry.
for me, it was the pregnant lady who got slaughtered.
So that's too heavy.
Very gruesome. Yeah, I get that.
That's daytime viewing. Nighttime will be a light comedy, something funny, something stupid. Like most of like the Seinfeld show I like because, like they used to say, it's about nothing. It's just silly.
I did the same with Family Guy.
Funny stuff. Family Guy.
Family Guy's awesome.
Another one, Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Very funny stuff. Nothing
light to digest.
Light, and that produces a very happy mood. So yeah, sometimes I'll watch something like this. But I like to read too.
Yeah, if the blue light is a problem, we talked about this before. But if you're on a laptop, you actually have applications that take away the blue light. And there's these hilariously looking orange glasses you can put on to block the blue light as well.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I should tell my girlfriend about that. She likes to use her computer at night.
Yeah, if you want an iPad in bed or something, you could put those glasses on. It looks hilarious, but it does block the blue light, so your melatonin production stays optimal.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, you always learn something new.
You can just install Flux, right?
Flux does the same. Although I don't know if it's there for Apple.
Are you really going to look at your girlfriend sitting there with orange glasses on, and you're thinking like, yeah, man, tonight's going to happen.
That's my fetish.
Right. Makes them even more attractive.
Exactly.
But I have become very good at sleeping because I cross time zones. I don't know whether your listeners know. I'm a digital nomad. I have no home, apartment, no place. I just live out of one bag, 45-liter bag, and I just travel all over the world, living either in hotels or occasionally Airbnbs. But it feels like too much like someone's
house.
Yeah. Their vibe. I prefer neutral.
You're a real guest if you're Airbnb.
Exactly. Yeah. So I like hotels, man.
I thought you had a house in Maui. You live in Maui now, right?
No.
I thought that was the thing you were talking about with Joe.
I was thinking about it, but it passed.
Okay.
It was a fluke.
It was a fluke.
Did your astrologer friend give you another location to go? Switch. No more Maui for you, man.
No Maui, dude. You're talking too much about astrology. Don't come back, dude. You're too weird for me. But now I just pretty much travel all over the place. I got in this pretty much real minimalist type lifestyle. It's very comfort to me. Not having stuff is much more comfortable than when I had a 4-story brownstone house and a 2-story gym with a jiu-jitsu school. It's very simple.
I think George Carlin has a great bit about it. It's just a place to put your shit.
Yeah, just a place to put your shit.
And if you go somewhere else, you take a bag with more of your shit.
More shit.
It's just shit storage.
Working some job that you hate, to buy shit you don't need.
Exactly.
And then to buy a house to put the shit. And then to rent a storage space or an attic to put even more shit. And before you know it, your life is just shit, just based on stuff. So for me, I've been there, done that.
You cut free from all that.
I had a lot of that stuff, but it didn't particularly give me any satisfaction or anything.
When did that happen? When did you decide?
After my divorce.
All right, it was just screw this.
I went kicking and screaming at this. It wasn't voluntary. My ex-wife said, "Get out!" It was like, whoa. It was like really traumatic. And then I realized, wait a second, seeming disasters can actually be blessings in disguise.
Oh wow!
And once I got out of there and away from it and realized what was happening, it was like, this is a blessing. This is basically what I really wanted all the while. And for some people, it's a dream come true, just being able to travel around. Yeah. I mean, if you would have told me 15 years ago, Steve, you'd be making your living on the internet, I'd say, are you insane? I don't even know how to use the internet. I didn't even have a cell phone until I was like 52 years old. I never learned how to use a laptop. I still don't. Thank God for Apple with all their simple, speaking of shit, the iPad, the iPhone, even a technological moron like myself
can work with that.
And I can actually make good money on the internet using simple Apple products.
Yeah. Because that was something I was working to, talking about the power of the internet. I saw you were doing your first webinar.
Yeah.
You've recorded that. That's why you were in Holland, right?
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
I did. With this really cool guy, He actually did a videotape for me in
I think he's our photographer.
Berlin.
He's our photographer.
Okay, you guys use it.
Yeah.
This guy's great.
Yeah,
man.
he's awesome.
Shout
Yeah.
out to Maarten Schut.
Yes.
Scott.
Yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff that he does. So I was very pleased with the videotape he did of baby crawling. I'm really into this crawling, vestibular reset. It helps you restore your movement patterns.
Oh.
You just basically do the stuff you did that any baby would do, like human development as you go through the different stages.
Yeah.
And what it does is resets the brain. Because, people pretty much sit all day long.
Yeah.
And they lose their ability to do simple movements. Just ask your mother or father to get down on the floor and back up. For a lot of people, it's really hard. Or ask any senior citizen over 70. They can't get down and up. What happens to them? They just lost the skill of doing it.
Yeah.
But what if you were to get down on the floor and get up all the time as a regular part of your day, every day? What if you get down on the floor and crawl around like a baby and roll? You keep those youthful movement patterns and you keep your brain sharp because you restore that part of the brain that tells you where you are in space. And you basically restore that part of the brain that tells you how to move, these movement-based skills. So I do that stuff every day.
And that's what the webinar was about.
That was,
Baby crawling.
It was, actually this first one was, that's what the photographer shot in Berlin.
Yeah.
This webinar yesterday that he shot was based on recovery ability.
Oh.
Probably the least understood aspect of training. We talked about it a little bit
A little, yeah.
with the callus analogy, training all the time and not giving yourself. And I gave tips on how you could increase your ability to recover from training and from working out.
Got a little sneak preview for us there. What's a good way to do that?
Well, number one is just rest between workouts. Just don't try to train every day.
No.
You can do something every day. Just don't make it hard every day. Some of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world only train a couple times a week. You actually have a brown belt at Fleischer. What's the name of your school?
Desmond van der Berg.
What is it?
Carlson Gracie Amsterdam.
Carson Gracie Amsterdam. There is a brown belt there that is the current world champion. The best in the world. That's amazing. I mean, think of how many brown belts in jiu-jitsu. The guy trains twice a week.
Desmond, he's like Masters 2, right?
Masters 2.
Masters 2, 3? Yeah, I know him from competition.
Yeah. The guy trains 2 times a week.
Yeah.
Which shows you that less can be more. It's not how much you do, it's the quality of what you do.
Yeah.
So obviously, he has found the power of recovery. Even Royler Gracie, 4-time world Brazilian Jiu Jitsu champion, maybe 5. He certainly has won so many titles. He was a 4-time Abu Dhabi World Submission Wrestling champ. Like, what a resume, right? Yeah. He told me that he never trained hard more than twice a week.
Yeah.
And that most of the time he would just either train really easy or just drill the moves, but he would go really hard twice a week.
Yeah, it's intensity.
I can tell you so many guys that follow this. And then there are other guys that are like phenoms, like Frankie Edgar, that he doesn't even believe in overtraining. He just drives himself every day.
Yeah.
But most people can't do that. There was just an article written by Michael Bisping. He says, I'll never overtrain again. He mentioned that he was called up in short notice to this last UFC fight where he won. And he said that he didn't do his normal 8-week camp. And he didn't do anything special for his preparation, And
Never fought better.
He said he never fought better. He felt wonderful. He said, I'm not doing any more 8-week camps or all this crazy training. He says, I just felt so good. He won the fight. And then you have the opposite where you get like a Frankie Edgar guy. I call it the Dan Gable syndrome. You know who Dan Gable was? Greatest American wrestler that ever lived. Maybe one of the best wrestlers ever walked the planet. He went through the Munich Olympics unscored on. No wrestler's ever done that. Imagine. The best guys in the world.
Unscored on meaning no one scored a point against him.
No one scored a point.
Yeah, I think, would Michael think the same if we would have lost?
Pardon?
If Michael Bisping would have lost, what would then the reaction be? Like,
well,
probably
everyone would say, oh, well.
Fuck, I didn't train.
It
I need
sucks.
my
You-
8-week
you-
training.
No,
You didn't train.
I can relate to this because I do a little weightlifting as well, and I've set personal records on deadlifts after not training for a week.
Yeah, me too. I've done the same thing.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
You recovered at a higher
Exactly.
level. Your body finally had a chance to heal and recover.
Very noticeable.
And so Frankie Edgar trains really hard all the time. The reason I mentioned Dan Gable, we have this term called the Dan Gable syndrome. He was absolutely driven to excel. This guy, when he won the NCAA wrestling championships, right? And after he went off the mat and got his medal, he put on a sweatsuit and went out and ran 12 miles. I mean, the guy was absolutely, like crazy dude. And he believed he couldn't train enough, but you pay a price for that, you know? Dan, unfortunately, has had 4 hip replacement surgeries, 2 knee. He's like about a year older than me, and the poor guy can barely walk. You pay a heavy price. So for every Frankie Edgar or every Dan Gable, you have 10,000 dudes that tried that crashed, burned, died, you never hear about because they just got so overtrained, so injured, so sick, they just couldn't keep it up.
Yeah, is it because they really, just ran through their body and used it too much, or is it, it's not the amount of effort they put it through, it's probably that they put it through effort in the wrong way?
Well, it's both.
Both. There is a limit to the amount of effort.
It's called a point of diminishing returns.
All right.
What is that point? It's probably different for every person. Your work capacity is different than mine, maybe, and someone else might have an unbelievable work capacity and other people not. It's pretty much genetic, A lot of it is, of course, mental too. But you only have but so much what they call nerve energy. And if you are always training on the nerve and always pushing yourself, you only have a certain set of finite physical properties, so much finite amount of energy that your body can produce. You have to know what that is.
Yeah.
Like the ancient philosophers, know thyself is the number one rule. You got to know yourself. And the same thing with diet or anything. But the problem is so many guys are pushing that envelope. My philosophy is this: why try to see how much exercise your body can stand? Why not see what the minimal amount is to still give you good results or even superior results? It's like the minimum dose. Why do, like a huge amount of THC when just a little bit will give you that nice little buzz?
It's nice enough. Yeah.
People are always pushing the envelope, saying how much they can do, but why? It's kind of like the CrossFit mentality.
Yeah.
Why do that to yourself? Because there is a big price to be paid. You do use up your finite physical resources, and eventually you end up paying the price when you get older. Joint wear and tear, trauma to the connective tissue, and by the time you get over 50, you don't see too many guys my age still on the mat.
I actually took the advice from Ido Portal in a movie where I saw it on YouTube, where he actually explains like training BJJ like 8 times a week or twice a day. BJJ is good for your health and it's overall very good for your body, but training it too much won't be very healthy for your joints and for your knees and stuff. So
it's a huge strain.
After that I was thinking about it. You don't want to train twice a day anymore if you don't compete anymore. Why don't you just do some fitness and strength and conditioning twice a week, do BJJ twice or 3 times a week, and do some yoga. You'll be fine.
You'll be fine. You need to get that dose response, the exercise dose response. It's like, okay, we know that alcohol is a deadly poison. Wine, beer, right? We know that alcohol will, very deadly. However, we also know that in small doses, it can be quite a good tonic. And they've been shown over and over again that people that drink a little bit, it's very good for the health, might even increase your lifespan. Exercise is the same way. A certain amount of dose is quite good for you, but it doesn't follow that a lot of it is better. And you're not going to get better results. You're just going to get injured. At best, you're just not going to make any progress. You're just going to stay the same.
Yeah. Did you ever hear of Tim Ferriss's Occam protocol?
The what?
The Tim Ferriss. You know who Tim Ferriss is?
Do you mean the
4-hour body?
Yeah, the 4-hour body.
He had a protocol. He called it Occam's protocol, from Occam's razor. Occam's razor is a philosophical thing. The simple solution is usually the right one, or something along like those lines. Yeah, I'm probably mutilating it. But he had a protocol where he said you just do 2 trainings a week, and every night, if you cannot increase your weight the next training by at least 10%, you go home and you rest and then you go at it again because you probably didn't rest enough. And he only gave you 2 exercises, but his thing was time under tension. He made you do the concentric and the eccentric 7 seconds or something, so you generated a huge amount of time under tension. But then he gave you rest, so just the basic 4 pillars, deadlift.
Yeah, it was very
bench,
similar
squat.
to the Jonesian philosophies, the high intensity training philosophy by
Yeah.
Dr.
But half an hour.
Darden and Dr. Jones. A great bodybuilder that actually put this to the test was the Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer and his heavy duty and his high intensity training protocols.
Yeah.
He won second to Arnold in the Mr. Universe competition, and many people thought that Mike actually beat Arnold, but it was a lot of politics. But Arnold was working out about 26 hours per week. Mike was working out 90 minutes a week.
Yeah.
Yet his physique rivaled Arnold on about 1/10 the time. So, or whatever 90 is to 26 hours. So, but the point is that you can get superior results with very little time, whether it be jiu-jitsu, martial arts, weight training. Rather than go and see how much you can stand, why not see how little you can do and still get good results? Maybe start with a couple times a week and then cut it back.
Yeah.
Or even better, start with twice a week, and if you're not getting results, add an extra day and see what happens. If you get worse results, go back to twice.
And that's a big part of getting to know yourself that a lot of people neglect. My personal trainer really hammered down on write everything down. Write
good to
down
keep charts.
Just you need to know if you had 2 days of rest, if you do not increase on your lift, that is information. You need to start looking at it that way, because if you ask me what's your optimal amount of rest, I don't fucking know. It's completely that's different for me, for you. You need to write it down and you need to experiment.
It's pretty
with this.
individual.
Yeah, and people always want the cookie cutter answer, but there's a lot of work in getting those, what's best for me? Well, that kind of depends, and we need to figure that out by just testing, writing down.
One good way is to measure your morning resting heart rate in bed every morning when you first wake up.
Oh, all right.
You have to find out what that average is. We're assuming you're not already overtrained. If you're already overtrained, you might want to take a couple of days off, so your body can heal.
Yeah.
But as long as you're not suffering overtraining symptoms of any type.
Is there a standard? What should it be? Your resting heart rate? Or is that individual as well?
It's individual.
All right.
But once you find out your average, let's say you take it 7 days in a row. I usually use an iPhone. There's an app, Insta Heart Rate.
Yeah.
You just put your finger in the camera lens.
But how real does that work? Because
I've monitored it physically and done the
Yeah?
Yes, I
iPhone.
think it's accurate enough.
I have it on my iPhone, but I wasn't convinced it was really.
No, it works.
Because it was so high every time.
This must be bullshit.
This must be bullshit.
I've tested it many times on
Right,
all
cool.
different. It works. But at any rate, you find out your average. Any morning that you wake up and it's 5 beats or more above your average, then you should not train that day. You're under stress. You have not healed from the previous workout.
Oh, wow.
It's a very simple way to do it.
Yeah, or you should eliminate other stress factors. Because if you had a crappy day at the office the day before, that might be influencing your heart rate as well, right?
Yes, but that also influences your physicality. So if you had a big fight with your significant other, let's say your girlfriend and your wife, hopefully not both your
At the same
your
time,
girlfriend
exactly,
and-
yeah.
That could be a lot of stress.
There have been days like that, yes.
Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Very stressful. Your heart rate's elevated,
Yes.
but that also affects you physically. Perhaps you shouldn't work out that day. This idea of using training to relieve stress, all you do is create more stress in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so stressed. I got to go to the gym and work out and get rid of my stress. But it doesn't work that way.
You're only adding to
all
it.
they do is add even more stress to the stress they already had.
Yeah.
They need a different type of release than the physical. But 5 or beats more generally means that you should kick back and take it easy. Now, here's the proviso. You should do this first thing in the morning before you get out of bed. If you need to take a whiz, go to the toilet, but lay back down for 5 minutes. Okay? Do not think about your day's activities. Don't start thinking about martial arts. Don't think about working out. Don't think about all the 15 things you have to do on your to-do list that day. No.
That'll just raise it.
You just got to go into like a really relaxed state, control your breathing, then you get your true resting heart rate. But I've made the mistake of like thinking about training jiu-jitsu or something.
Yeah.
But boom, it's like elevated, man.
Yeah, because that's a neurological pathway that just fires up, that
It
puts you
fires.
into warrior mode immediately.
It puts you into warrior mode immediately. So you got to use mental, mental discipline
Yeah.
and not allow yourself to start thinking about all this stuff. But it's a real good way to basically monitor what's going on. Now, I have violated that heart rate principle, whereas I would feel great and really energetic in every other way, even though I had an elevated heart rate. So maybe I would work out that day because I just felt so good. So I also use what we call the 10-minute rule. Anytime I start training, if I don't feel better within 10 minutes, let's say I'm not sure, my heart rate's fine, but I feel kind of crappy, I don't have a lot of energy, I'll go 10 minutes, and if I don't feel better within 10 minutes, I stop. That's it. I just quit right then and there. It could be for jiu-jitsu, for running. If I don't immediately start to feel better and my energy rise, then I know that I really need to rest that day.
And what about second wind?
The 10-minute rule. Second wind is a oxygen.
Yeah, but to me, it describes. I know these trainings that you talk about. You go into your Muay Thai class and you're not really feeling it. And the first 10, 15 minutes are hard, but then after a while you start getting, and you're so glad you went. But there's this first peak where your body reacts and your heart goes irregular and your breathing is hard, and then you get into this regulating, and then it's easy.
I think it's more emotional. I think a lot of times you just go in, you're just kind of down, like you just
being a bitch.
Yeah, just being a little bitch.
The inner bitch.
You just need to get.
Sounds like me.
Get bitch slapped upside the head, and now all of a sudden you feel better.
Yeah.
Now a lot of times I think you it's easy to get in a low grade depression sometimes in this modern world. We got the artificial light, and you've been sitting in that damn chair staring at the computer screen. That's enough to make anybody depressed, right?
Yeah.
And you just the act of sitting passively online, which many of us make our living from, that is really draining from an emotional, energetic point of view.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many times in the morning I literally have to tear myself away from my iPad, force myself to get up off my lazy ass and get outside. And the minute I do, it's like, oh my God, I feel so much more energetic. And within a few minutes of walking and breathing, I start feeling great.
Yeah.
So you can't always go by how you feel, because a lot of times your feelings can be, regulated by like whatever boring activity you might be doing or whatever. But I do use the 10-minute rule, because there have been times I've torn myself away. I get out there, I move for 10 minutes, and I still feel shitty. Then I know I better rest today.
It's hard to do that. It's hard to go like, no, not today. Ego starts kicking in and like, no, you have to work out. And, there's always a little doubt. Aren't I, picking the easy way because I wasn't feeling like training anyway?
Yeah.
So that might be there a little.
We all have that critical voice in the head. I call it the mother, like the evil mother.
The evil mother. The stepmom.
Do you guys get the Simpsons?
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
The early days.
You know Principal Skinner?
Yes.
And his mother? That's the mother. The critical mother. Seymour! She's always...
Why haven't you?
Yeah, she's always shaming this guy. He's shame-based.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people have this inner conversation that they're not even aware of. In their head, it came from parents, relatives, maybe grandparents, maybe a misguided but well-meaning clergyman. It could have been teachers. Somehow you get the inner critic that's always nag. No matter what you do, you get that little critical voice. A lot of. I mean, this is.
It's especially manifested in your younger years.
It manifests a lot in the younger years.
8 years old or something. Could be anything, like a teacher who just gives you
a lot of crap about basically putting you down. And you get this little inner voice, don't be a little bitch, come on, drive yourself, push yourself. Don't forget that voice, because usually that voice is the wrong voice. That's all part of the ego manifestation. It's not really you. It doesn't belong there. The sad thing is a lot of people that aren't even aware that they're having these inner conversations. And they can't understand why they're so desperately unhappy. But in reality, their inner critic is just so harsh and always picking on them. And even when they have a victory, or even when they do something really fine or really good, a lot of times they still get that thing going on in there. It's a cause of a lot of misery. And becoming aware of that, you got to kill that person. You got to execute.
Wow,
you got to execute that voice. That is the harsh ego mind that is just driving you into oblivion.
We talked about this a lot as well.
It took me a long time to.
Yeah. Well, about what age was that acceptable for you? Because this is exactly the thing we're struggling with right now.
It took me to my 50s, dude.
That takes so long. Wow.
Yeah. But I could have been earlier, maybe, if I had been a little bit more consciously aware of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just became more and more consciously aware of this whole concept of like, who is this person telling me all these awful things about myself?
It's such an energy drain.
It's an energy drain, and it's so endemic in modern society. And, you know, you hear some people talk about it, but it's a very real phenomenon. But you don't need to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or anything. You just have to become, you know, once again, awareness is the first step to correction in anything. And once you're aware that you do have these little negative inner conversations going on, you got to kill it, man. Because it's just going to make your life miserable. And the sooner you get rid of it and kill it, and you never really kill it because it always kind of
Nags back in there.
It can get back in there if you're not careful.
Yeah. Even once you've you know, looking at what you've done, you've made a name for yourself. I mean, you're an authority on Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and strength and conditioning training. And I mean, that must at least give some sort of, you know, self-confidence on that particular topic, that the doubt sort of, I mean, that's my hope. If I make enough, you know, if I get enough experience, that doubt goes away because I know I am master of my expertise, something like that. That doesn't happen.
I mean, for sure. I feel pretty confident in certain subjects, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, don't get me wrong. I still have my fears sometimes, you know? I still, before seminars, I get really nervous and you know, keyed up. Yeah.
I was hoping that would go away.
But I'm almost glad, you know, public speaking, still scary. But, you know, you transcend it. You use the fear to fuel you, to help you perform.
Yeah, fear is not a bad thing per se.
You know, I mean, basically it's the fear of not being accepted or being rejected or people, you know, thinking badly of you. I mean, everyone wants to be liked.
Yeah, can I ask a question about that? For example, we talked about the astrology thing. Does that get underneath your skin at all? Or are you like, nah? I could imagine being in the same position.
About the negative comments?
Yeah, that might have gotten to me.
It hurts my feelings a little bit. Because I want people to like me.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I'm not immune to that.
No.
You know, no one likes to be criticized or thought poorly of, or people belittling you. Especially when they don't even know you. They heard one little tiny slice of a conversation. They don't even have a clue about what you really stand for or who you really are. And then they make a judgment. Yeah, that bothers me.
Yeah,
I'll be honest, it does. That's one reason why I try not to read that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't even watch my own videos. I try to turn off the comments because some people, no matter how good it is or the information, they're still going to just...
Yeah, but it's always the same. We had a guy here who was a coach in Holland, Remco Klaas, and he had a great expression on this. No matter what you do, there's always two kinds of people. People that love what you do and people that hate what you do.
Pretty much.
If you change your behavior, you're going to have two kinds of people. People that love what you do and people that hate what you do.
Hate what you do.
There's always going to be guys that don't like what you do.
There's always going to be guys. But the thing that amazes me is, who even writes this stuff?
Well, that's the guy with the hand on the one hand on his cock and the other one on the keyboard,
typing with the nose. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, man, you have nothing better to do with your time. I mean,
sometimes that is the case. Yes.
Do you make comments in articles, or I never have.
No.
Hardly.
I have never wanted to. It's like,
that was 20 years ago.
Who
We're
cares?
30 years old.
I mean, it's stupid, right? I mean, obviously they have nothing better to do with their time.
Yes and no, because when I release an article,
and no one really even cares about what they're saying. They're just like some weird anonymous guy that, you know.
We're on time, almost.
Almost out of time. Oh, at what time do we have to turn it off?
No, I mean the video is almost on time.
Whoa.
Oh,
so we got 2 hours and 14 minutes.
So wow, we really ate up
so
the batteries
I'm
on
just
your
handing to you like.
All right, that was
Stop
time to wrap it up, huh?
yeah, he wants to tighten it up. All right, sorry. Can I ask? Can we touch one more topic?
Yeah. By the way, I've had a great time with you.
Yeah, this is fun.
You have to come back, man.
You guys have some great energy, man.
You have to go.
Thank you.
I don't feel so weird being around you guys.
Well, that's good, I guess.
I guess that's
because
good.
we're weirdos as well. Yeah.
Birds of a feather.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, we'll let the internet decide what they think.
Yeah. Be gentle.
Be gentle, please.
Yes. One of the questions I had is that I know a lot of guys that are trying to make a business out of personal training, strength and conditioning trainers, people that help with nutrition, help with the body, with the movement. Those are guys that are usually really passionate about what they do. They come from a sport background. They want to help other people become more fit and energetic, but they're usually horrible at business. at putting up a very good business, a solid business around being a personal trainer and stuff like that. And I heard you talk about, for example, the webinars you do, and you make money doing this successfully. Do you have any tips for people that want to make a living out of this and are struggling with that?
Well, that was me in the beginning. You know, I was classically trained as a health and physical education teacher.
Okay.
I was an educator. I worked in the public school system. I coached wrestling and American football, gridiron football. And I knew nothing about business. I worked as a fitness director after I left teaching, but I wasn't really doing the business. The owner of the club was doing the business. I was merely the director of his fitness center. When I finally opened up my own gym, I found myself woefully unprepared for business. So my ex-wife actually took a business course, and we learned the hard way about business, basically trial and error. When I finally broke off and started doing my own online training, I already had a pretty good handle on personal training. The main thing is for the trainers out there, don't be afraid to ask for the money. There seems to be this big reluctance or fear to talk about money with your clients. That should be one of the first things you discuss, and be upfront.
What's an average rate in America for a good personal trainer?
Oh, it just depends where. I mean, obviously in New York City, I'll charge $250 to $300 an hour.
Wow.
Where LA, maybe the same thing. Whereas if I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, or something, it might be $100 or $125. You know, usually when I'm in Europe, I charge 150 euros. You know, because the economy is a little bit different here. You know, but it's a sliding scale.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm in some place where the guy's just like when I was in Croatia, $75 is a fortune to those people.
Yeah.
75 euros. Yeah.
Well, in Holland, I think 150 is high end, but I think a very good personal trainer can easily ask 100 euros.
Here's the problem, though. You see, if you underprice yourself, people automatically assume you don't know what you're doing. They have a low opinion of you because, you budget mindset. You know, you attract a budget kind of person. But if you overprice yourself, you price yourself out of the competition. I would recommend to any new trainers out there that you just call up a whole bunch of people as an anonymous client. Maybe have your girlfriend or somebody do it. And just call like 10 different trainers.
Call the competition. Call the competition and ask what they charge for one-on-one sessions or, different gyms. And then price yourself somewhere in the middle. Isn't that called a fishing expedition?
Not too low, but it's a good thing. It's it's research. Yeah. My girlfriend did that. When I first started doing online personal training, I had no idea what to charge. She actually enrolled in 4 different online personal training courses. We paid for the information.
She sounds like quite the entrepreneur.
She is really amazing, Teresa. But anyway, we had a pretty good handle on what to charge because we actually investigated and saw what others are doing. So we try to put ourselves somewhere in the middle, not too high, but obviously you don't want to undervalue yourself either. And that way you can figure out.
Cool. You have to come back someday, Steve.
It's very valuable.
Too much to share. Yeah, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thank you. I really appreciate the chance to get the word out.
And to be number 50. That's
number 50.
Be proud, man. 50. Be proud. So,
congratulations, gentlemen. That's a real...
that's a milestone.
That's a milestone.
Yeah. I'm very happy with you as the guest.
50th anniversary.
Yeah, exactly.
So for the listeners, if you're into supplements and you like the honest supplements that you're probably familiar with if you listen to Joe Rogan, we sell them at nutrofit.com. We're the official distributor, actually, and
in Europe.
Yeah, in Europe. So we sell honest supplements, bulletproof, natural stacks. So go to nutrofit.com and get yourself served. There's just one more thing. Like I know Steve from Joe Rogan, so that's how we entered this podcast. So I'm gonna finish this podcast like Joe would do. It's like, you, sir, are a bad motherfucker. Always wanted to say that. Thank you, Joe Rogan. Thank you, Steve.